The biggest regret of my life was that one night, scrolling through Facebook like a king reviewing ancient decrees, I liked every single one of Clara Sterling's posts. The campus Ice Queen's profile was as pristine as her reputation, clean as a crime scene, with only 3 posts in as many years. One was a shared university lecture, another a silhouette at sunset with the caption silence, and the last was a 3-year-old photo of her stupid, and now certainly dead, cactus. I swear my thumb just slipped. That, and I was bored out of my skull, figuring a goddess like her had me blocked anyway. I had no idea the algorithm would betray me and push every single notification to her phone. The next day, she cornered me by the science building. Those cool, clear eyes locked onto me, her voice soft but unervingly persistent. "Caleb Hayes," she said, "every single thing I've ever posted. You looked at all of it, didn't you?" I saw the fanatical focus in her eyes, and a cold sweat broke out across my back. This was bad. She wasn't here to call me out. She was here to collect. The price for a few careless clicks, I was beginning to realize, would be a lifetime. 1. The biggest regret of my life wasn't stealing my mom's heels as a kid and snapping off the heel, or the time in middle school I wrote a love letter to a girl in the next class and accidentally gave it to my homeroom teacher. It wasn't even when my dad promised me a top-of-the-line gaming laptop if I got into college, only to do a complete 180 once I got my acceptance letter, claiming that boys need to be raised lean. No, my biggest regret was that one dark, mind-numbingly boring night when I trusted Facebook's bullshit people you may know feature and, with a twitch of my thumb, clicked on Clara Sterling's profile. Clara Sterling, Blackwood University's Ice Queen, a living legend. At the freshman orientation, she'd given a speech as the student representative. Her face, her vibe, that chilly aura like she'd just wandered down from a frozen castle. It was enough to make 90% of the male student body feel utterly inadequate. The other 10% were plotting how to conquer the unconquerable. Of course, I wasn't in the 90%, nor was I in the 10. I was in the category of guys who'd watch the spectacle from a distance, think, wow, she's something else, and then immediately go back to wondering if the dining hall had barbecue ribs today. I knew my place. A goddess of her caliber and a regular college guy, like me, were separated by a galaxy. I wasn't even worthy of being a random like on her feed. So, when I found I could actually see her profile, I was shocked. What shocked me more was that her page was as clean as a lick plate. 3 damn posts. Total. One was from last September, a shared link to a lecture by some academic heavyweight. The caption, FYI. One was a sunset photo from 6 months ago. The composition was aggressively minimalist, mostly sky, with a single, crooked tree on the horizon. The caption was a single word, silence. The last one was from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, she apparently owned a cactus. She took a picture of it, captioned, life. Judging by how green and vibrant the cactus looked in the photo, I figured it was now long dead. I don't know what possessed me at that moment. Maybe it was the dead of night, and my brain wasn't working right. Maybe my thumb had a mind of its own. Or maybe I was just curious to see what would happen if you liked something on an Ice Queen's profile. So like a complete idiot, my finger flew across the screen. Tap, tap, tap. I like all 3 of those vintage, fossilized posts. Then I tossed my phone aside and went to sleep. Honestly, I thought it was nothing. Like tossing a pebble into the Pacific Ocean. Not even a ripple. Clara Sterling would probably never notice. Even if she did, she wouldn't bother with a nobody like me. I was wrong. So wrong. The next afternoon, after my elective class, I was chewing on a lollipop, joking with my roommates about whether we should game all night or hit the strip outside campus for some real food. I just walked out of the lecture hall and turned onto the tree-lined path to the dorms when a figure silently blocked my path. I almost walked right into her. What the hell, who? The complaint died in my throat when I looked up and saw who it was. Clara Sterling. She was wearing a simple white sundress, standing under the dappled shade of the trees. Her skin so pale it almost glowed. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting specks of light on her, but she radiated a chill that was completely at odds with the warm afternoon. Those eyes, usually so distant and cool, were now fixed on me, churning with an emotion I couldn't decipher, like a whirlpool hidden beneath a calm sea. My roommates, ever the opportunist, saw what was happening, shot me a series of lewd winks and exaggerated oaths, and then abandoned me without a shred of loyalty, leaving me to twist in the wind. Clara? Can I help you? The lollipop in my mouth made my words come out muffled. I was trying to figure out if I'd accidentally stepped on her new shoes, or if one of my jackass roommates had been caught taking her picture and she was here to settle the score with me. She didn't speak. She just took a small step forward, closing the distance between us. Suddenly, we were less than 2 feet apart. I could smell a faint, cool scent on her, like a pine forest after a snowfall. This was way too close for comfort, a blatant violation of personal space. I instinctively wanted to back away, but my feet felt nailed to the ground. She tilted her head up, her gaze locking onto mine, her voice soft but laced with an unyielding force. She enunciated every word. Caleb Hayes. Every single thing I've ever posted. You looked at all of it, didn't you? My brain went blank with a deafening buzz. Holy crap. She knew. She actually found out. Those 3 stupid posts were enough for her to hunt me down? Was the Ice Queen really this petty? I quickly pulled the lollipop out of my mouth, trying to explain. No, Clara, look, you have to let me explain. Wait, no, not like that. It was a Facebook recommendation. My thumb slipped. It was an accident. An accident? She repeated softly. Her lips seemed to twitch into the faintest of smiles, so fast I thought I'd imagined it. The whirlpool in her eyes deepened. From life 3 years ago to for last year, and then silence 6 months ago, you didn't miss a single one. You liked them all. She paused, her gaze like a surgeon's scalpel, dissecting every flicker of expression on my face. Her voice dropped even lower, carrying a strange, skin-crawling certainty. Caleb, you've been watching me for a long time, haven't you? I was speechless. There was no way I could talk my way out of this. This wasn't an interrogation. That look, that tone, that absolute certain. I was starting to realize she wasn't here to call me a creep. She was here to confirm something. Looking at the almost tangible obsession in her eyes, a mixture of delusion and a bizarre sort of satisfaction, I finally felt a chill creep up my spine, spreading across my entire back. I was screwed. The price for a few careless clicks was looking bigger by the second. That look in her eyes was the look of someone claiming their property, and I had absolutely no idea what was going on. After that day, it was like a bizarre, silent switch had been flipped in my life. Clara didn't corner me like that again, but she was everywhere. I'd stumble into my morning lecture, eyes still bleary, looking for a spot in the back row to zone out, and she'd already be there. Next to her, a beige, plush-looking seat cushion would be saving my spot. When she saw me, she'd just raise her eyes, her gaze lingering on my face for a second before she'd gently pat the empty seat beside her. Her expression was calm, but it carried a weight of expectation I couldn't refuse. If I dared pretend I didn't see her and try to slip away, she would just stare at me, her unwavering gaze boring into the back of my head until my scalp tingled and I'd reluctantly shuffle over. At the dining hall, I'd be complaining to my roommate that the server's hand was shaking again and they'd barely given me any meat, only to turn around and see her standing quietly in line behind me, holding a delicate, 2-tiered lunchbox. The chaotic noise of the cafeteria seemed to create a bubble of silence around her. She just looked at me. When I finally came to my senses and stammered for her to go ahead of me, she shook her head, her voice as light as a feather brushing past my ear. I'll wait for you. And then she really did just stand there, waiting until I had my food. She followed me like a shadow as I found a table, and then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, sat down across from me. She opened her lunchbox. Inside was an artfully arranged, perfectly balanced meal. She picked up her chopsticks and, without a word, began transferring pieces of sweet and sour pork and braised shrimp from her box onto the meager pile of rice on my tray. You eat it. I have enough. I tried to protest. Her movement paused. She looked up at me, her long eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings. Her tone was completely matter-of-fact. You've lost weight. Eat more. You still here. I'd weighed myself yesterday. I was up 5 pounds. My roommates on the other side of the table were making faces, mouthing things like, holy crap, dude. And the Ice Queen is feeding you. All I could do was shoot them back a look that screamed, I'm suffering here, you assholes. And that wasn't even the weirdest part. Once during gym class, we had to run 2 miles. I was completely gassed, collapsed on the side of the track like a dying dog, chugging water. She appeared out of nowhere, holding an unopened bottle of Gatorade, the label facing perfectly outward, and a neatly folded, clean white towel that smelled faintly of soap. She crouched down, very close to me, so close I could see the tiny beads of sweat on the tip of her nose. She didn't say anything, just handed me the drink and the towel. Then her gaze fell to my ankle. I had an old injury there from playing basketball, and it was definitely throbbing after the run. Here, she said, extending a finger, hovering it just over the spot on my ankle. The tip of her finger was almost touching my skin, radiating a strange coolness. Does it hurt? I was so startled I nearly jumped up, yanking my foot back. Nope. It's great. Totally fine. She retracted her hand and said nothing more. But her eyes, still fixed on me, clearly said, You're lying? I know it. I was losing my goddamn mind. The feeling was like being caught in an invisible, yet unbreakable spiderweb. Every small movement just reminded you of the constant restraint, and struggling seemed pointless, only likely to get you more entangled. I tried to get help. First, from my useless roommates. Caleb, man, what kind of luck did you stumble into? My dorm's RA Mike clapped me on the shoulder, his face a mask of envy. That's Clara Sterling, the girl of 1,000 dreams. And she's being so... He struggled for the words. Attentive to you. What's there to complain about? Yeah, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Another roommate, Josh, mumbled through a mouthful of the imported chocolate that Clara had brought for me on her way and which I had immediately pawned off on them. If you don't want her, trade with me. I promise to just lie back and take it. Get lost. I kicked at him half-heartedly. You guys don't get it. This isn't attentive. This is surveillance. Control. I feel like she's tagged the very air I breathe. They just roared with laughter, clearly not taking my suffering seriously at all. In their eyes, I was the idiot who'd found a winning lottery ticket and was complaining that the paper was scratchy. Asking my roommates for help was a failure. It just resulted in secondary damage and mental ridicule. Next, I tried running away. I deliberately slipped out of the dorm half an hour early, taking the long way around and entering the lecture hall through the most remote west gate of campus. There's no way she can catch me now, I thought. The moment I reached the classroom door, I saw her leaning against the wall, holding 2 breakfast bags. One had a sandwich and milk. The other had a bagel and a coffee. A bagel from the place I had casually mentioned wanting to try yesterday. She saw me, her face impassive. She just held out the bagel and coffee. Eat it while it's hot. I was speechless. I tried to communicate with her over WhatsApp. Me, Clara, you really don't have to do all this. Liking your post was seriously a mistake. My thumb just slipped. She replied almost instantly. I know. Me. So, you really don't have to waste your time on me. You're so amazing. You deserve someone better. Her, you are the best. Me, I'm a mess. I don't shower enough. I let my socks pile up for a week, and I snore. Her, campus records show a daily charge to your student ID for hot water. The socks hanging on your balcony are a different color every day. As for snoring, she paused, then sent a message that made my blood run cold. Your breathing was very steady last night. Not a sound. My hand trembled. The phone almost fell on my face. How did she know my breathing was steady last night? Did she plant a bug in my dorm room? No way. That was insane. A chill rose from the bottom of my heart. All the previous incidents could be explained away as her being incredibly observant, or coincidences. But this message tore away that gentle facade. This wasn't normal interest. This was monitoring. I stared at her simple profile picture, and for the first time, it hit me with absolute clarity. I was being targeted by a Yandere, an obsessive, possessive personality with her own twisted logic, terrifying dedication, and an incredible ability to act on her impulses. And in her mind, it all started with my damn accidental likes, the proof of my long-standing, silent admiration. Despair washed over me like an icy tide. My only hope, I guess, was to wait for her to get bored, or to realize I was a lost cause, and then give up on me. But the thought died as soon as it appeared. I remembered her eyes, so intense they almost burned. The probability of her giving up on me was lower than me winning the Powerball jackpot tonight. As I stared at my phone screen, my heart freezing over, debating whether it was faster to call the police or just drop out of college, my phone buzzed again. It was her. Tomorrow is Saturday. 7 a.m. Third floor of the library, east side by the window. I've saved us seats. We'll study together. It wasn't a question. It was a notification. Immediately, another message popped up. It was a picture. I opened it. It was my class schedule for the semester, and a circle I had drawn with a red marker on a weekend date. Next to it, I had written, New Game Starfall Releases. That was on my own desk calendar, the physical one sitting on my desk in my dorm room. Below the picture was her text. I know about the Starfall release. We'll study in the morning. I'll go with you to buy it in the afternoon. You can play it at night. I stared at the phone, my heart seized by an icy hand. She even knew about this. She didn't just know my plans for tomorrow. She knew the little flicker of joy I was holding on to, the one thing I was looking forward to, that one last hope for a moment of escape. With her message, it vanished like a soap bubble. She wasn't giving me a choice. She was sealing off my very last escape route. 7 a.m. Saturday morning, third floor of the library, east side. When I drifted to the designated spot like a zombie, sporting 2 massive dark circles under my eyes, Clara was already there. Morning light streamed through the huge glass windows, bathing her in a soft, golden glow. A thick English language book was open in front of her, her slender, pale fingers gently turning a page. Hearing me approach, she looked up. Her gaze fell on my face, and her brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. "Didn't sleep well?" she asked, her voice hushed to match the library's quiet. "Didn't sleep well?" "I barely slept at all." The thought that she knew about the circle on my calendar made my dorm bed feel like a bed of nails. I tossed and turned all night, wondering if this life was even worth living anymore. But what could I say? "You scared the hell out of me?" I was a coward. I didn't have the guts. "Stayed up gaming," I mumbled, pulling out the chair opposite her and plopping down. I threw my empty backpack onto the table with a thud that wasn't exactly quiet. A few early bird nerds shot me annoyed looks. Clara, however, didn't react. She just picked up a thermos from beside her and pushed it in front of me. "Honey water. It's warm." I stared at the thermos, which had a simple cartoon character on it. I didn't move. She didn't rush me, just watched me with that calm, patient expression that demanded I give in. The air felt thick, frozen. In the quiet library, the only sounds were the rustling of pages and a distant, occasional cough. We were in a silent standoff, like two stubborn idiots. I knew I was being difficult, but a dark, frustrated anger was simmering inside me, with nowhere to go. This feeling of being seen through, of having every inch of my personal space invaded, was suffocating. In the end, I was the one who broke. Mostly because the stares from the surrounding students were about to burn a hole through my back. I ran a hand through my hair in frustration, snatched the thermos, twisted off the lid, and took several large gulps. The warm, sweet liquid soothed my throat, which was dry from lack of sleep. As she watched me, her lips seemed to curve upward ever so slightly, a ripple on a frozen lake, so fast I almost missed it. Then she looked back down at her book. I pulled out my phone, ready to combat the suffocating study session with some quality slacking. Just as I unlocked the screen, a news alert popped up. It was the final promotional push for Starfall before its release. Right? The game. This afternoon was supposed to be my escape to freedom, my embrace of joy. I instinctively glanced up at her. She was still focused on her book, her profile elegant and serious. An idea, like a match struck in the dark, flared to life in my mind. She wanted to go with me to buy it, right? Fine. Let's see how the untouchable Ice Queen handles the chaotic, frenzied scene of a major game release. A spectacle that could rival Black Friday. Afternoon. The biggest electronics superstore downtown. There was still half an hour until Starfall officially went on sale, but a long, snaking line already snaked out the door. The air crackled with restless excitement. Guys and girls in various nerdy t-shirts chattered animatedly about system specs and pre-order bonuses. Some were even cosplaying as characters from a game, drawing stares from passersby. I was in my element, dressed in my baggiest t-shirt and shorts, flip-flops on my feet. But Clara, walking beside me, looked like an elf who had stumbled into the wrong dimension. She was still wearing the same elegant dress from the morning, with a thin knit cardigan over it, her long hair falling smoothly over her shoulders. She was completely out of place in the loud, colorful, chaotic crowd. Countless eyes, both obvious and subtle, fell on her. There was awe, curiosity, and for my fellow gamers, looks of pure envy directed at me for bringing such high-level gear. She remained expressionless, seemingly oblivious to her surroundings. The only time she reacted was when the crowd jostled me, and she quickly reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip wasn't tight, but it was unnervingly steady. "Stay close," she said, her voice still clear amid the noise. My heart gave a strange little jump. I tried to pull away, but she just tightened her grip, her fingertips cool against my skin. "It's crowded," she added, her reasons sound and irrefutable. "Whatever. Let her hold it. It's not like I'll lose a limb," I thought, giving up. My attention was quickly drawn to a commotion at the front of the line. They were starting to sell. The crowd surged forward like a burst dam. I was swept along, pushed irresistibly forward. Clara stayed right by my side, one hand still gripping my wrist, the other now protectively at my side, shielding me from a large guy trying to squeeze past. "Hey, stop pushing. Dude, move it. I pre-ordered." "Crap, someone stepped on my foot." Shouts echoed from all directions. I used my height and reach to my advantage, finally squeezing my way to the counter. "Hey," I yelled at the harried-looking employee. "Starfall Collector's Edition. I have a reservation. Paid the deposit. Caleb Hayes." As the employee bent down to search for my order, a guy next to me in a loud floral shirt and obnoxious purple hair got impatient and tried to shove past me, his elbow aimed squarely at. "Clara, what's your problem? Get in the back of the line." I reacted instinctively, twisting my body to block the blow with my shoulder and shouting back at him. The impact sent a jolt of pain through my shoulder. The guy in the floral shirt froze, startled by my outburst. He probably decided I wasn't worth the trouble, muttered a curse, and backed off. Before I could even check my shoulder, I felt the hand on my wrist tighten abruptly. I turned to look at Clara. Her eyes, usually so calm and placid, were now like a deep pool with a stone thrown into it, ripples spreading across the surface. She looked at me, her expression incredibly complex. It was like surprise, mixed with a pleased, sparkling light. She didn't say anything. She just rose slightly on her toes, leaned in close, and whispered in a voice only I could hear, "You protected me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, filled with a secret, triumphant joy, like someone who had just discovered a hidden treasure. My heart skipped a beat. Damn it, this wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to make her see how crazy this was, to scare her off with the insane crowd. How did it have the opposite effect? Just then, the employee found my reservation and handed over the big box containing the collector's edition, emblazoned with the game's cool logo. I reached for it, but a slender, pale hand got there first, taking the heavy box from the employee. Clara held the game box, which was nearly half her size, and looked up at me. The ripples in her eyes had subsided, replaced by a calm surface, but deep down, a flame seemed to burn quietly. "I'll carry it," she said, her tone matter-of-fact, as if it were her exclusive right. Then, as I and a crowd of my fellow male gamers watched in stunned silence, this delicate, ethereal ice queen, who looked like she'd never touched anything heavier than a book, securely held the ridiculously out-of-place game box. Her other hand, still gripping my wrist, pulled me along as she turned and began to navigate back through the surging crowd. Her back was straight, her steps firm. She didn't look like she was emerging from a chaotic game launch, but like she was marching into her own inviolable territory. And me? I was like a captured, slightly bewildered trophy held firmly in her grasp. The noise of the crowd still swirled around us, the air thick with the smell of sweat and excitement. But in my world, there was only the cool, steady touch on my wrist and the image of her, so serious, almost clumsy yet stubborn, carrying that game box. This is bad, I thought, my heart sinking. This turn of events seemed to have backfired, and I was the one caught in the trap. The frustration that had been building all day had vanished, replaced by a more complicated emotion, something sour, bittersweet, and strangely heart-pounding. She wasn't just a terrifying stalker. She was also kind of goo. The thought appeared out of nowhere and startled me. I looked at the Starfall Collector's Edition held tightly in her arms, then at her hand gripping mine. I was starting to not mind it so much. The game was secured, a hot potato that Clara carried all the way back to campus before placing it ceremoniously on a bench outside my dorm. "Play it tonight," she said, looking from the box to me, her eyes filled with a strange satisfaction, as if this wasn't a game, but some kind of testament to our relationship. My throat felt a little dry. I managed a non-committal grabbed the box, and practically fled. I could feel her gaze on my back until I turned the corner into the stairwell. In the days that followed, that feeling of being held in an invisible grip didn't fade. It intensified. She was no longer content with just accompanying and feeding me. She began to seep into every crack of my life. For instance, my desk, which was usually a disaster zone, was now always mysteriously tidy when I got back from class or the gym. Books were arranged by height, pens were in their holder, and even the pile of dirty socks I'd let accumulate would vanish, only to reappear the next day on my bed, neatly folded and smelling of that same cool, clean soap scent she wore. I interrogated my roommates. They all raised their hands and swore they weren't the magical house elf, looking at me as if I were a god. "Caleb, bro, does the Ice Queen even do your laundry? What level of pampering is this? Did you save the galaxy in past life?" I was speechless. This was pampering? This was a declaration of territory. She was telling me, "Your space is now under my management." For another example, I casually mentioned that the chili oil from a certain window in the dining hall was pretty good. The next day, a small sealed jar of bright red chili oil appeared next to my plate. A printed label stuck to it. "Eat less spice. Bad for your stomach." If I dared not to eat it, or give it to someone else, she wouldn't say a word. She would just sit there and stare at me until my scalp tingled, and I'd reluctantly mix the chili oil into my rice. Even more terrifying, I discovered my social life was being silently purified. Friends who used to hit me up for all-night gaming sessions or late-night bull sessions over beers had become hesitant and evasive. They'd either have something come up or claim their girlfriend was being strict. I didn't think much of it at first, until I cornered one of them and demanded to know what was going on. My friend looked around nervously, then lowered his voice, his face etched with lingering fear. Caleb, it's not that we don't have your back. It's your girl. She's terrifying. My girl who? I asked confused. Clara Sterling, he said, his face twisting in misery. Remember last week when I tagged you in the group chat about going to that new barbecue joint? The next day, she found me. She didn't say anything harsh, just asked if I knew you had a sensitive stomach and shouldn't eat too much spicy food. Then she asked me if I passed my probability theory retake exam. What the hell? How did she know you failed a class? I was floored. That's what I want to know. My friend was on the verge of tears. And she said it with a smile. Caleb needs to study with me lately, so he might not be free. You don't need to invite him to things like this in the future. The smile was pretty, but my back was covered in cold sweat. Dude, you're not dating her. You've got a guardian angel from hell. We can't handle it, man. We really can't. I stood there, my hands and feet turning to ice. So, not only had I lost control of my physical space, but now my freedom to socialize was gone too. She was like a precision social engineering machine, methodically pruning away all the branches she deemed unnecessary, determined to cultivate me into her personal property. My world was being taken over, from every angle, with no blind spots. The realization made my skin crawl, yet strangely, it also brought a sense of numb powerlessness. Maybe, under her obsessive, unwavering care, was getting used to it. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. No, this can't go on. I had to do something. An opportunity came quickly. The university was holding an arts festival, and my class was doing a choir performance that required matching outfits. The girl in charge, Leah Vance, was a lively, efficient person. She tagged me directly in the class group chat. At Caleb Hayes, what's your height and weight? Need it for the size chart. I was about to reply when my phone buzzed with a priority notification. A message from Clara, concise and to the point. 6'1", 155 lbs. I stared at the message. Leah replied in the group chat with an OK emoji and added, "Got it. Thanks, Caleb's other half." Smirk. I stared at that smirk, my internal alarm bells screaming. This was a huge misunderstanding. And Clara's reaction time. Had she set a special alert for my class group chat, too? The night of the festival, the backstage area was pure chaos. I had changed into my costume and was wrestling with my tie. The damn thing was like a slippery eel in my hands. I just couldn't get it right. Caleb, need some help? Leah Vance happened to be passing by and, seeing my struggle, kindly offered. I was about to say no thanks when a cool voice sounded from behind me. That won't be necessary. My whole body stiffened. I turned around. Clara was standing there. Well, had she arrived? She was wearing a dark green velvet dress that made her skin look even paler, like a noblewoman who had stepped out of classical oil painting. Her face was expressionless as her gaze swept past Leah, finally landing on the tangled mess of my tie. Leah was clearly intimidated by her sudden appearance and commanding presence. She gave an awkward laugh. "Oh, hi, Clara. Well, I'll let you two talk." And with that, she fled. Clara stepped forward and, without a word, raised her hands. Her cool fingertips brushed against my neck. I instinctively tried to pull back, but her other hand pressed against my shoulder, holding me in place. "Don't move," she commanded, her voice soft but carrying an undeniable force. She looked down, concentrating on untangling the knot I had made. Her long eyelashes cast a small shadow on her cheeks. She was surprisingly skilled, her fingers deftly twisting and weaving. Her gentle breath ghosted over my throat, sending a shiver through me. The clamor of voices and music backstage seemed to fade away. All I could feel was the coolness of her fingertips, her clean, crisp scent, and her flawless profile, so close to mine. "There," she said, finishing a perfect Windsor knot. Her fingers lingered, smoothing out a wrinkle on the tie, their tips tracing a phantom line over my collarbone. She looked up, her eyes like two deep, bottomless pools, clearly reflecting my stunned face. "Caleb," she said my name, her voice low and soft, but it felt like it had hooks. "You're mine." It wasn't a question, nor was it a proclamation. It was a statement of fact, and I, caught in her deep gaze and the intensely intimate proximity, felt my heart hammer against my ribs. I couldn't even form a single word of protest. I knew she was monitoring me, controlling me. I knew it wasn't normal. But when she looked at me with that focused, possessive gaze, when she did these small, intimate things for me, the rebellious thoughts in my mind melted away like snow in the sun. I think I was really done for. The realization was even more terrifying than being monitored by her. She saw the struggle in my eyes, the gradual softening of my resistance. A faint smile touched her lips, pleased with my reaction. Then she reached out, not for my wrist this time, but gently took my hand. fingers intertwined. Her hand was small and soft, her fingertips still cool, but they fit perfectly between my fingers, leaving no room for escape. "The show is about to start," she said, pulling me toward the audience seats, leaving behind a wake of stunned, envious, or pitying stares. I looked at our joined hands, then at her calm, determined profile. I was faced with a dilemma. Do I pull my hand away and possibly face a more intense, more uncontrollable reaction from her, and deal with the strange, reluctant feeling in my own heart? Or do I just let myself sink into this beautiful, dangerous swamp named Clara Sterling? I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Whichever way I chose, it felt like a fall from which there was no return. After the festival, I felt like a stew simmering on low heat, calm on the surface, but bubbling with a chaotic mix of flavors inside. Clara seemed very pleased that I hadn't pulled my hand away that night, and with my subsequent, almost default compliance. Her infiltration became even more matter-of-fact and even more detailed. When I was taking a break during a basketball game, she would appear with an uncapped bottle of perfectly temperate Gatorade. When I was staring at my computer screen, tearing my hair out over a term paper, she would silently place a cup of hot coffee at my elbow, accompanied by a few exquisitely wrapped blueberry gummies that were supposedly good for eye strain. She even somehow got her hands on the lecture notes and key points for all my classes, printed them neatly, bound them, and accidentally left the binder within my reach one day when I was staring blankly at my textbook. What the hell could I say? Resist? I tried. It was like punching cotton. She always had a way of making my feeble struggles seem ridiculous and futile. Accept it? My heart was twisted with a strange awkwardness. I felt like a pampered pet, with even the rhythm of my tail wags being pre-programmed by my owner. Until that afternoon. I didn't have class and was holed up in my dorm, trying to finish that god-awful paper. My phone screen lit up. It was a message from Clara. Unusually, it wasn't text, but a picture. I opened it. It was a pharmacy receipt. I zoomed in. I could vaguely make out words like cold FX and fever patches. A strange tightness gripped my chest. Was she sick? Right on cue. Her text came through. Just one word, but it carried a soft, weak feeling that was a world away from her usual coolness. Sick. My heart skipped a beat. This was weird. Before, when she was controlling me in all those ways, all I felt was annoyance and helplessness. But seeing that one word, imagining her lying alone in her dorm, feverish and with no one to take care of her, that annoyance was instantly replaced by a much stronger emotion. Worry. Damn it. Something was seriously wrong with me. I stared at the phone screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard for a long time. Finally, I typed out a dry, simple reply. Did you take medicine? Yes. She replied quickly, but then another message followed. It's not working. It was followed by a sticker of a little cat with droopy ears and a tear in its eye. I was speechless. Who could resist this? The Ice Queen was sick, and she was sending stickers to play the pity card? The contrast was a precision strike against my already crumbling mental defenses. I took a deep breath, as if making a momentous decision, and my fingers flew across the keyboard. What's your door number? I'll come check on you. The moment I sent the message, I felt like a soldier heading off to war. Tragic, yet with a strange sense of anticipation. She replied with her dorm number almost instantly. I grabbed my jacket, told my roommates I was heading out, and amid their knowing, suggestive smirks, I bolted from the dorm. On the way, on some strange impulse, I made a detour to the campus store and bought some fruit and a can of peaches. I'd heard they were good for a fever. I don't know, it was just something my mom used to say. Standing outside her dorm building, I signed in at the front desk, and carrying my offerings, I walked up the stairs to the girls' dorm with a feeling of almost religious reverence. My heart was pounding like a drum. Her roommate answered the door. She looked at me, stunned for a moment, then a knowing smile spread across her face as she stepped aside to let me in. The room was clean and had that faint, pleasant scent unique to girls' dorms. Clara's bed was by the window, with a light gray curtain drawn halfway. She was lying there, under a thin comforter, her cheeks flushed an unnatural red, her lips slightly chapped. Her usually perfect hair was spread messily on the pillow, a few sweat-dampened strands stuck to her forehead. She had her eyes closed, her long lashes casting shadows, looking incredibly fragile. Hearing the noise, she opened her eyes. When she saw me, her usually cool gaze was clouded with a layer of moisture, hazy and filled with a hint of confusion and reliance. "You're here," she said, her voice hoarse and nasal. In that instant, all my previous struggles, my awkwardness, my resentment, were shattered by the sight of her in this weakened state. Possessive? Stalker? The hell with all that. Right now, She was just a sick person who needed to be taken care of. Yeah, I replied, walking over. I placed the fruit and the can on the small table by her bed, feeling a bit clumsy. I bought some fruit and some canned peaches. Heard they're good for a fever. She looked at the items, her gaze lingering on the can of peaches for a few seconds before slowly moving to my face. A very faint smile touched her lips. Thanks, she said softly. I pulled over her roommate's chair and sat down, asking awkwardly, Did you take your temperature? What is it? 101.7, she answered obediently, her eyes never leaving me. That high? If the medicine isn't working, you should go to the campus clinic. I said, getting a little anxious. No, she refused immediately with a hint of stubbornness. I just need you with me. There was again that unwavering reliance. But I found that I didn't hate it. In fact, there was a secret satisfaction in being needed. I sighed, resigned. I picked up the water glass on her table and felt it. It was cold. I went to the bathroom, rinsed it with hot water, and refilled it with warm water before handing it to her. Drink more water. She took the glass, sipping it slowly, but her eyes never left me, like a small animal afraid of being abandoned by its owner. In that moment, a hard corner of my heart completely crumbled. To hell with possessiveness, to hell with stalking. At least in this moment, she was real, vulnerable, and she needed me. I watched her drink the water, watched her brow furrow slightly in discomfort, watched her eyes, which were a million times softer than usual. A mix of pity, protectiveness, and some other indefinable emotion grew like a vine, wrapping tightly around my heart. All my previous ideas about who she was and what she had done were shattered in this moment by a more primal, more powerful emotion. All I knew was that this sick, unusually docile Clara Sterling in front of me made my heart ache, and she made my heart race. The realization was like a bolt of lightning, splitting open the calm and resistance I had tried so hard to maintain. I think I was really, truly falling for her. Falling for this obsessive, crazy Yandere who had used every means possible to trap me by her side. Had my worldview collapsed? A little, maybe, but mostly there was a sense of finality, of acceptance, and a strange, heart-pounding excitement. She finished the water and handed the glass back to me. Her fingers brushed against mine, her skin scorching hot. Caleb, she said, looking at me, her eyes exceptionally bright and moist from the fever. You feel sorry for me. Another statement. I looked at her and didn't deny it. The light in her eyes intensified, as if stars had fallen into them. She propped herself up slightly, leaning closer to me, her hot breath ghosting over my cheek. Then, she said, her voice raspy and seductive, Can I have a kiss? I heard. A kiss can cure anything. My brain exploded into a million white fragments. Looking at her face, so close to mine, flushed an unnatural red but still breathtakingly beautiful. Looking at the undisguised anticipation and possessiveness in her eyes, the last shred of my resistance vanished. To hell with reason. I leaned down with a feeling that was almost reverent, almost reckless, and gently, carefully, I kissed her dry, hot lips. The touch was softer than I had imagined, with the slight bitterness of medicine and her unique, cool scent. It lasted only a second. I pulled back as if I'd been burned, my heart about to leap out of my throat, my face probably hotter than her fever. But she looked as if she had been infused with a spring of life. Her eyes were shockingly bright, and a clear, satisfied smile spread across her lips. She lay back down, took my hand, held it tightly, and then closed her eyes contentedly, murmuring, sealed, Caleb, you're mine forever now. I looked at our joined hands, then at her sleeping profile with its sweet smile. My mind was in chaos, yet I felt a strange, unprecedented calm, and certainly, before, I had been trying to find a way to escape her. Now, it seemed the goal had changed to, how could I better adapt to her or cooperate with her? This new objective, it seemed, made my heart beat even faster. That kiss, tasting of medicine and feverish heat, was like a nuclear bomb detonating in my brain. It obliterated all my previous struggles, anxieties, and resistance into dust, leaving only a swirling cloud of particles named Clara Sterling. When the dust settled, my world had been reshaped. Caleb Hayes, had finally surrendered. No, it was more than surrender. It was willingly leaping into the trap, named Clara Sterling, and even finding the trap's interior rather comfortable. The next day, her fever was gone. She was back to her cool, aloof self, but the way she looked at me was different. Before, it was a gaze of obsessive scrutiny and unwavering possession. Now, beneath that icy surface, there was something warm, like sunlight penetrating the deep sea. It was the lazy, satisfied contentment of being fully gratified. And me, after my change in perspective, my view of her possessive behaviors had completely changed. She tidied my desk? That was wifely. She prepared warm water for me? That was thoughtful. She cleared out my useless social invitations? That was filtering out junk information to help me focus on my studies. Even the memory of her carrying that enormous game box now seemed endearingly clumsy. I was done for her. My rose-colored glasses were as thick as a fortress wall. But my change of heart didn't change how others saw things. To them, I was still the poor schmuck being terrifyingly controlled by the campus queen, and she was the possessive Yandere. And so, trouble came knocking. A hot thread suddenly appeared on the Blackwood University subreddit, with a sensationalist title. Shocking. Is the untouchable queen of the finance department, Clara Sterling, emotionally manipulating and controlling her boyfriend? The details are disturbing. The post didn't name names, but with descriptions like a sophomore named Caleb, a gamer, and was seen being led by the hand by the campus queen, they might as well have posted my student ID number. The original poster described, in highly exaggerated terms, how I was being monitored, socially isolated, and publicly humiliated by Clara, painting me as a tragic figure who had lost all freedom and dignity. The post ended with a call to save our innocent fellow student. The thread blew up with hundreds of comments. Some were envious, accusing me of humble bragging. Some believed it, condemning Clara as a psycho. And others, just there for the drama, tagged the university's official account, demanding an investigation. My roommates saw the post and were furious, rolling up their sleeves to go to war for me online. Caleb, you're not going to take this, are you? We've got your back. We'll flame them into oblivion. I stopped them, feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, the post was full of crap, making Clara sound awful. On the other hand, some of the details, like being monitored and socially isolated, weren't entirely wrong. But could I let them slander her like that? No way. I'll handle it, I said, taking my phone. I took a deep breath and started typing. I didn't directly refute the claims. Instead, I chose a more infuriating approach. I replied to the hot thread directly from my main account. At OP, thanks for the hard work. Must have been tiring making all that up. First of all, thanks for the concern. I'm alive and well. Very happy, in fact. Secondly, my girlfriend cares about my health and reminds me to drink less and avoid spicy food. That's emotional manipulation. By that logic, hasn't your mom been manipulating you since you were born? Thirdly, I like it when she's in charge. I enjoy being controlled by her. Is that a problem? It's our thing. Ever heard of it? Finally, my girlfriend, Clara Sterling, is beautiful, kind, and treats me incredibly well. Some people just can't stand seeing others happy and resort to slander. It's a pathetic look. Attached, a photo of me and Clara. She forced me to take it. In the picture, I have a helpless look on my face as she holds my arm, while she leans against me with the faintest but genuine smile. Everyone can disperse now. We're doing great. I hit send. The subreddit exploded. Holy shit. The man himself has entered the chat. That reply. So cocky, so protective. Damn, I'll take this dose of PDA. So, it was all lies? Where's the Opie now? Come out and fight. To be fair, the campus queen smile in that photo is so sweet. She looks completely different. Looks like true love. Bless them. Public opinion flipped instantly. The original poster was flamed so hard they deleted the thread and ran. I put down my phone, a sense of accomplishment swelling in my chest. Look how well I defend my girlfriend. My roommate stared at me, dumbfounded. After a long moment, Mike patted my shoulder gravely. Caleb, you're a lost cause. You're in too deep. I just grinned, and I love it. But it wasn't over. A few days later, an unexpected visitor sought me out. It was Leah Vance, the girl who had wanted to help me with my time backstage at the festival. She pulled me into a corner of the lecture hall, her expression complex. Caleb, about that stuff on the subreddit. Are you okay? I'm great, I said, a bit confused. Are you being forced? She asked, lowering her voice, her tone a mix of pity and urgency. If she's holding something over you, you can tell us. We'll all help you. I got it instantly. Another one who was convinced I was being manipulated. I cut her off, my tone serious. Leah, thanks for your concern. But really, it's not like that. Clara and I are great. I really like her, and she really likes me. Those were all rumors. Leah stared at me, trying to find even a hint of reluctance on my face, but she failed. She opened her mouth, then closed it, finally stammering, but she controls you like that. Don't you feel like you have no freedom? Freedom? I paused. If this had been before, I would have launched into a tirade. But now, I thought of her vulnerable and dependent when she was sick. I thought of her eyes lighting up at my defense of her. I thought of the little surprises she would secretly prepare based on my passing comments. All that so-called control was wrapped in her clumsy, overwhelming love. I smiled, speaking to Leah, but also to myself. Maybe to others, it looks like a cage. But for me, I paused, finding the most accurate words. It's her way of loving me. And it just so happens that I need that unique sense of security. Leah was speechless, her expression shifting from pity to a look of utter disbelief, as if she were staring at a creature from another planet. After sending Leah on her way, I felt inexplicably better. It was as if this external test had made me even more certain and confident in my hopeless love. That evening, Clara and I were studying in the library. She obviously knew about the subreddit incident. After we sat down, for the first time ever, she didn't immediately open her book. Instead, she turned and just looked at me, her gaze quiet and lingering. "What's up?" I asked, feeling a little self-conscious under her scrutiny, and touched my face. She reached out and gently took my hand, which was resting on the table. Her fingertips slowly traced the back of my hand, a cool, ticklish sensation. "Caleb," she said, her voice as soft as the night wind against a window pane. "You defended me." "Duh, you're my girlfriend. Who else would I defend?" I said matter-of-factly, turning my hand to enclose her cool fingers in my palm. Her eyes blinked once, and a sprinkle of starlight seemed to fall into them. She leaned closer in our usual quiet corner by the window and whispered in my ear, "You get a reward." Then, before I could react, she quickly kissed my cheek. The touch was soft, carrying her clean, crisp scent, and was over in an instant. I froze completely. My heart felt like it had been tickled by a feather, a tingling sensation spreading through my entire body. The spot on my cheek where she had kissed me began to burn. She watched my ears turn beet red and my stunned expression, and a clear, mischievous smile curved her lips like a cat that had successfully stolen a treat. "Back to studying," she said, turning back around as if nothing had happened, picking up her pen. But the faint blush on the tips of her ears betrayed her. The restlessness in my heart could no longer be contained. To hell with studying. I shot up from my seat. In her surprised gaze, I grabbed her hand and hissed, "Let's go. Outside." "Where?" "Somewhere private," I said, looking in her eyes, my heart pounding like a drum, my voice raspy with emotion. "To get my reward back." Her eyes widened in a flicker of shock, which was immediately replaced by a more intense light of shy delight. She didn't resist, letting me pull her quickly out of the library study area. The hallway was dimly lit. I pulled her along, all the way to a secluded corner of the fire escape. I gently pressed her against the wall, lowered my head, and looked in her shimmering eyes and her slightly parted, inviting lips. "That one didn't count," I said, my voice low and husky, with an undeniable dominance. "Now, this is the real reward." And with that, I lowered my head and kissed her deeply. This time, it was no mere peck. I parted her lips, gently but forcefully stealing her breath, tasting her sweetness. She stiffened for a moment, then melted into my arms, clumsily but earnestly returning my kiss, her hands clutching the fabric of my shirt. In the dim corner, there were only our ragged breaths and the soft, wet sounds of our kiss. It turned out that cooperating with her illness, enjoying her unique love, was so addictive. This time it felt amazing. That kiss in the fire escape was like opening Pandora's box. It unleashed the beast of possession in my heart and completely tore away the thin veil of resistance between me and Clara. Now, she clung to me more openly, and I, damn it, enjoyed it with a clear conscience. Before, she had been unilaterally infiltrating my life. Now, it had become a two-way street of, well, cohabitation-style dating. We still had separate dorm rooms, but besides sleeping, we were practically joined at the hip. Class, studying, meals, even when I wanted to go for a run on the track, she would sit quietly in the bleachers, a book on her lap. But I knew her peripheral vision was always locked on me. Strangely, I no longer felt suffocated. Instead, there was a sense of being filled, a reassuring completeness. Like a ship that had been drifting at sea had finally found its own exclusive, albeit slightly obsessive, but absolutely safe harbor. Of course, this harbor occasionally had its own small storms, reminding me of her true nature. For example, our department got a new, young associate professor named Dr. Chun. He was gentle, well-spoken, and his lectures were witty. He was popular with the students, especially the female ones. One day in his class, he called on me. I answered reasonably well, and he smiled and praised me. "Mr. Hayes has a very clear thought process." That was it, just that one sentence. And the atmospheric pressure around Clara, sitting next to me, dropped several degrees. She didn't say anything, just lowered her eyes and, with her expensive fountain pen, began to write Dr. Chen's name over and over in the corner of her notebook, forcefully, then crossing it out, writing it again, crossing it out again, with enough pressure to tear the paper. I was speechless. The moment the bell rang, she snapped her notebook shut, grabbed my hand, and walked out. She pursed her lips the entire way, silent. I wanted to laugh, but I also felt sorry for the poor notebook. "Hey," I said, swinging our joined hands. "Is this really necessary? Dr. Chen is almost 40. His kid is probably in elementary school." She stopped, looked up at me, her eyes dark. "He smiled at you. That was a teacher admiring a student. It's normal." I tried to reason with her. "I don't like it," she cut me off flatly, her tone tinged with an almost imperceptible grievance. "There was a light in his eyes when he looked at you." I facepalmed. Her jealousy was completely irrational, but also, damn it, kind of cute. To soothe this ruffled cat, I had to sacrifice my dignity. I leaned in close, whispering in her ear in a voice only we could hear, "Well, he's definitely not as handsome as me, and he's not as good a kisser. Right, Clara?" The tips of her ears turned red. She shot me a glare, but the frost in her eyes melted instantly, replaced by that pleased, sparkling light. She let out a small humph and didn't bring up Dr. Chen again, but her fingers tightened around mine, a clear declaration of her sovereignty. "See, to handle a Yandera, you have to stroke her fur the right way, and, occasionally, shamelessly show off your superiority." These playful moments became more and more frequent. I was about to get lost in the sweetness of her all-encompassing possession. Until that afternoon, Clara and I had just left the library, heading to our favorite dessert shop off campus. As we reached the campus gate, a slightly flippant voice called out, "Sis, who's this? Not going to introduce us?" I looked over and saw a young man in a flashy printed shirt, with a few streaks of blonde in his hair, leaning against a conspicuous sports car. He was looking at us with a half-smile. He resembled Clara, but his features had an added air of indulgence and recklessness. Clara stopped in her tracks. Her grip on my hand tightened abruptly, her nails digging into my skin. The color drained from her face, the soft lines of her expression instantly tensing, returning to that cold, unapproachable aura I had first seen. But this time, it was even colder, tinged with a sense of being on high alert. My heart tightened. Who was this guy? To make Clara react so strongly? "My brother, Tristan Sterling," Clara said, her voice as sharp as ice shards. The introduction was brief, and she didn't even look at me. Brother? I was stunned. She had never mentioned having a brother, and this atmosphere was anything but sibling affection. Tristan looked me up and down, his gaze carrying an undisguised scrutiny and a hint of contempt, as if he were evaluating a piece of merchandise. "Oh, so this is the little boyfriend you're so crazy about you'd even fight with the family over him?" he drawled, his gaze finally landing on our tightly clasped hands. He sneered. "Doesn't look like much. Sis, since when did your taste get so bad?" I frowned. Who was this asshole? Spouting crap the moment he showed up? Clara took a step forward, shielding me with her body, her voice even colder. "My business is none of your concern. Get back in your car." But Tristan didn't move. Instead, he leaned in with a smirk, his gaze passing over Clara to land directly on me. He lowered his voice, but it was just loud enough for the few students passing by to hear. "Dude, nice work. It takes some skill to get my high and mighty sister this obsessed." But his tone shifted, dripping with malicious mockery. "How does it feel to be a kept man? The Sterling family's door isn't one that a commoner like you can just walk through." "Tristan," Clara snapped, her voice sharp with a rare anger. A fire ignited in me. He could insult me, but he couldn't insult Clara's feelings for me like that. I gently pulled Clara from in front of me to behind me and took a step forward, nearly nose to nose with Tristan. I was a few inches taller than him, and I looked down at him, a cold, mocking smile on my face. "You're the brother, right? First of all, my relationship with your sister is between us. It's none of an outsider's business. Secondly, my gaze swept over him in his sports car, my tone filled with undisguised contempt. You're proud of showing off a flashy car that your family bought for you? My girlfriend and I are happy eating at a food truck. A leech like you who lives off his daddy wouldn't understand a thing about real feelings." Tristan had probably not expected me to fight back, let alone hit a nerve. His face turned ugly. "Who the hell are you calling a leech?" "Whoever answers to it," I said, not backing down an inch. A small crowd had started to gather. Clara stood behind me, gripping my arm tightly. I could feel her body trembling slightly, not from fear, but from an intense anger and, maybe, a touch of emotion because I had stood up for her. Tristan's face was livid. He pointed at me. Fine. Very fine. Caleb Hayes, right? I'll remember you. You just wait. After spitting out his threat, probably realizing he wasn't going to win this round, he shot us a venomous glare, turned, got in his car, and sped off with a roar of the engine. I let out a breath and turned around, pulling Clara into my arms and gently patting her back. It's okay. The asshole's gone. She leaned against me, her body still a little stiff, her arms wrapped tightly around my waist, her face buried in my chest. I'm sorry, she mumbled. What are you sorry for? I chuckled, ruffling her hair. It's not your fault. Is your brother. Always like this. She was silent in my arms for a few seconds before she said in a low voice, yeah, he's spoiled. After a pause, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a complex mix of worry and determination. Caleb, you don't have to deal with him. If he give you trouble again, tell me. Tell you what for? I raised an eyebrow. I can handle it myself. Besides, isn't it my duty to protect my girlfriend? She looked at me, the ice in her eyes gradually melting, replaced by a gentle, shimmering light. She stood on her toes and, ignoring the few remaining onlookers, quickly pressed a kiss to my lips. Your reward, she whispered, the tips of her ears turning pink. I smiled and held her tighter. This reward is a bit light. How about you make it up to me tonight? She shot me a playful glare, but didn't object, just buried her face in my chest again, a secret smile playing on her lips. Tristan's appearance was like a stone thrown into a calm lake. Although the ripples had subsided for now, I knew the trouble wasn't over. He represented Clara's complicated family, a world I had never touched. But looking at the girl in my arms, who had softened at my defense of her, I felt no fear. To hell with family drama, to hell with arrogant brothers. This woman was mine to protect. That asshole Tristan's appearance was like tossing a handful of broken glass into the sweet honey of my relationship with Clara. The honey was still sweet, but now it occasionally cut, reminding me that this honey pot was encased in a not-so-sweet box called reality. Clara didn't go into detail about her family, and I didn't ask. But from her reaction that day and Tristan's arrogant behavior, you didn't need to be a genius to figure out that her family was not just rich, but their relationships were probably more tangled than a spiderweb. She seemed terrified that her family's issues would affect me, or rather, us. In the days that followed, she clung to me even tighter, a flicker of unease occasionally flashing in her eyes. She was like a frightened deer, constantly on alert for an arrow from the woods. Whenever that happened, I would squeeze her hand tightly, or find an excuse to kiss her and tell her, I'm here. It's all good. She would relax like a stroked cat, her focus returning to me. But we both knew it wasn't over. Sure enough, a week later, I was on the basketball court, sweating it out. Clara was in her usual spot in the bleachers, my personal cheerleader. A few guys in basketball jerseys, clearly not from our university team, sauntered over, heading straight for me. The leader, a guy with a buzz cut and muscles like a personal trainer, blocked me as I was about to catch the ball. Hey man, Caleb Hayes. I stopped, wiping the sweat from my brow. Yeah. Heard you're pretty tough. Dared to stand up to Mr. Sterling's son, Buzzcut said, crossing his arms, his pecs flexing. I understood immediately. Tristan's revenge had arrived, sending a few jocks to teach me a lesson. How? Unoriginal. I glanced up at Clara in the bleachers. She was already on her feet, her face icy, her gaze as sharp as a knife, fixed on the scene. I gave her a slight shake of my head, signaling her to stay put. What? Tristan didn't have the guts to come himself, so he sent a few of his dogs to bark for him? I sneered, mentally calculating my chances in a 3-on-1 fight. Damn, it's been a while since I've been in a fight. I'm a little rusty, but I can't lose face. Still talking tough. The skinny guy next to Buzzcut cursed and lunged to push me. I sidestepped, grabbing his wrist, and was about to flip him over my shoulder when a cool, commanding voice cut through the air. What are you doing? Clara had somehow made her way to the edge of the court. She wasn't looking at me. Her gaze, like ice-tipped arrows, was aimed squarely at the three jocks. She was holding her phone, the screen pointed at them, clearly recording. I've already called the police and campus security, she said, her voice not loud, but carrying clearly across the court. Malicious provocation, assault on a student. The evidence is clear. Which department are you from? Names, student IDs. The three guys had clearly not expected this. Seeing Clara's phone and her ice-cold, principal-like demeanor, their bravado deflated instantly. Buzzcut's face contorted. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You just wait. And with that, the three of them exchanged glances and scurried off the court, much faster than they had arrived. I let out a breath. Damn, that was a close call. I turned to Clara. She put away her phone and walked over to me, looking me up and down, her brow furrowed. Are you hurt? No, you got here just in time. I grinned, reaching for her hand. But she pulled away, her eyes filled with fear and a hint of anger. Not at the three guys. At me. Why didn't you call for me? She stared at me, her voice trembling. You were going to fight them alone? I paused, scratching my head. I just didn't want you to worry, and I thought I could handle it. You couldn't handle it. She suddenly raised her voice, drawing the attention of the other players. She seemed to realize she had lost her composure, took a deep breath, and forced herself to calm down, but her eyes were red. Caleb, do you know who they are? They don't hold back. What if he got hurt? Looking at her, so anxious and angry, yet with a hint of grievance, the strange awkwardness I felt at being rescued vanished, replaced by a wave of warmth and the feeling of being deeply cared for. I'm sorry. I admitted my mistake, pulling her into my arms. This time she didn't resist, letting me hold her, though her body was still a little stiff. Next time, I promise I'll hide behind you and let you protect me, okay? She let out a muffled humph against my chest, but her arms wrapped tightly around my waist. The incident seemed to be resolved, but I knew the root of the problem was Tristan. That guy was a persistent pest. He had failed this time, but there would be a next time. Sure enough, a few days later, a man in a suit and gold-rimmed glasses, looking like a high-level assistant, stopped me outside my dorm. Mr. Hayes? Hello, I am Chairman Sterling's special assistant. My name is Wong, the man said, handing me a business card. His smile was polite, but his eyes were scrutinizing. The chairman would like to invite you to dinner. Are you available this evening? Chairman Sterling? Clara's father? My heart leaped. Here it comes. The main event. Is this the classic, here's $5 million to leave my daughter scene? I held the high-quality business card, my mind racing. To go or not to go? If I go, it's probably a trap. A round of humiliation is inevitable. If I don't go, it'll look like I'm scared, and I can't hide forever. I glanced at the message Clara had just sent me, asking what I wanted to eat tonight, that she would go save us a seat. Damn it. For the sake of a peaceful future as a kept man, I have to go to this dinner. I'm available, I said, pocketing the card and smiling at Assistant Wong. Just send me the time and place. I'll get there myself. That evening, I arrived at a very exclusive private club. A waiter led me to a quiet private room. There were only 2 people inside. In the main seat was a middle-aged man with a commanding presence. He resembled Clara, but his features were colder, more severe. It had to be Chairman Sterling. And next to him was Tristan, looking at me with an expression that said he was enjoying the show. Good evening, Chairman, I said, neither servile nor arrogant, pulling out a chair and sitting down. Cowering was not an option. Not in this lifetime. Chairman Sterling didn't speak, just sized me up with the gaze of someone long accustomed to power, as if evaluating a piece of merchandise. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. Tristan spoke first, his tone mocking. Dad, this is the one my sister found. Besides having some guts, he's a completely useless, poor student. I ignored him, looking directly at Chairman Sterling. Chairman, if you have something to say, please be direct. Chairman Sterling finally spoke, his voice low and emotionless. Leave my daughter. I knew it. I sneered inwardly. Why? I asked. You are not suitable for each other, he said succinctly. Clara's future, the Sterling family's son-in-law, should not be a student from an ordinary family with no background. Whether we're suitable or not is for Clara to decide. I met his gaze. I love her. She loves me. That's enough. Love. Chairman Sterling sounded as if he'd heard a joke, a cold smirk touching his lips. Can you eat love? Can it help the Sterling family consolidate its business empire? Young man, don't be so naive. What do you want? Money? I can give you a sum that will ensure you and your family are comfortable for the rest of your lives. With that, he pushed a check across the table. The number of zeros on it made my eyes swim. I stared at the check, not moving. To be honest, for a split second, I was tempted. Who doesn't like money? But then I thought of Clara's sparkling, dependent eyes when she looked at me, of her secret happiness when I defended her, of her determination on the basketball court when she stood up for me. This money would burn my hands. My conscience would kill me. I took a deep breath and pushed the check back. Chairman, I don't want your money, I said, looking at him and enunciating every word. I want Clara Sterling. Tristan let out a derisive snort. Chairman Sterling's gaze turned even colder. You think you have a right to say that? Whether I have the right or not isn't for you to decide, nor for money to decide, I said, standing up. I didn't want to continue this pointless conversation. It's for Clara to decide. If she ever tells me to my face that she doesn't want me, I'll get lost immediately, no questions asked. But until then, no one is going to drive me away from her, including you. With that, I turned and walked out, not looking back at the father and son. I knew I sounded a bit melodramatic, a bit reckless, but in that situation, all I wanted to do was make my position clear. Walking out of the club, the night wind felt cool against my back. I realized I was covered in a cold sweat from the tension. My phone rang. It was Clara. "Caleb, where are you?" "The food is getting cold," she said, her voice tinged with impatience and worry. Hearing her voice, the anxiety from confronting her powerful family instantly dissipated. "Almost there." I smile, my tone light. "Wait for me. I'm taking you out for something better." After hanging up, I looked at the bustling street and let out a long breath. The gauntlet had been thrown down. The pressure was on me. But strangely, I didn't feel scared at all. Instead, I felt a sense of exhilarating release. "Clara Sterling, you troublemaker. I'm really in it for the long haul with you." A dilemma? There was none. I chose her, without hesitation. Leaving that room, which reeked of the cold scent of money, the night wind did little to ease the heaviness in my heart. Chairman Sterling's final look wasn't one of anger, but rather a condescending indifference, like an adult looking at a misbehaving child. He clearly hadn't taken my declaration seriously. I was just a buzzing fly he couldn't be bothered to swat. The feeling of being completely dismissed was more frustrating than being yelled at. I took a few deep breaths of the cool air, pushed down my irritation, and pulled out my phone to call Clara back, deliberately making my voice cheerful. "Almost there. Wait for me. I'm taking you out for something better." She was silent for a couple of seconds on the other end, then just gave a soft without asking any questions. When I arrived at our usual little restaurant, she had already ordered all my favorite dishes. She sat quietly in a corner, the dim yellow light tracing the soft lines of her profile. But if you look closely, you could see her hands in her lap, her knuckles white. I walked over and sat down across from her, forcing a smile I hoped was bright. "Starving, right? Let's dig in." She didn't pick up her chopsticks. She just looked up, her clear eyes seeming to see right through my act. "He found you." My hand, reaching for a piece of food, froze. Crap. I knew I couldn't hide it from her. "Yeah," I said, putting my chopsticks down. I wasn't going to lie. I gave her the gist of what happened, omitting the exact number of zeros on the check, and emphasizing my own heroic unbowed by power, uncorrupted by wealth performance. She listened quietly, her face unreadable, until I finished. Then she asked softly, "Why didn't you take it?" I was taken aback. "The money," she said, her eyes fixed on mine. "That money would have been enough for you and your mom to live very comfortably. Why didn't you take it?" I looked at her, a bitter taste in my mouth. The way she asked, it was as if she expected me to take the money and run. "Clara," I sighed, leaning forward and taking her hand from the table. "It was cold. I want you, not the money. If I took the money and left you, what would that make me? How would I be any different from that leech Tristan, who lives off his dad?" She looked at me, her eyes blinking. A shimmer of moisture seemed to pass through them, but it was gone in an instant. She squeezed my hand back hard. Her fingertips were no longer cold, but had a little warmth to them. "Idiot," she cursed under her breath, but her lips curved up uncontrollably in a complex expression of heartache, relief, and being deeply moved. "Yeah, I'm a huge idiot. That's why you've got me completely wrapped around your finger," I said, going along with her, rubbing the back of her hand with my thumb. "So, Miss Sterling, you'd better be good to this idiot from now on, or I'm getting a raw deal." She finally smiled, a small smile, but it was like the first flower blooming after the snow melts. It made my heart skip a beat. The rest of the meal felt much more relaxed. We both knew the trouble wasn't over, but at least for now, we were on the same side. However, I had underestimated the diversity of a wealthy family's tactics. When force didn't work and money didn't work, they resorted to dirty tricks. First, rumors started spreading around campus about my dark past. Things like Caleb Hayes used to be a delinquent, he got into fights, his dad's long gone, and his mom. And even detailed accounts of me juggling multiple girls at once. The rumors came fast and furious, clearly orchestrated and premeditated. They were on the subreddit, anonymous confession pages, and even in class group chats. I was furious. I knew exactly whose handiwork this was. "Tristan Sterling, you son of a bitch, is this all you've got?" I tried to explain, but with rumors, the more you deny them, the faster they spread. Even some classmates I was on good terms with started looking at me strangely. Clara's reaction was even more intense than mine. She used some unknown means to lock onto the IP addresses of the accounts spreading the rumors the most, and trace them back to their source. Sure enough, it was a mix of trolls paid by Tristan and a few of his lackeys trying to suck up to him. She didn't tell me what she did, but the next day, the most active accounts vanished, and all the rumor-mongering posts were wiped clean. The subreddit mods even posted a public announcement, warning that slander and rumor spreading would face legal consequences. Her methods were swift, clean, and decisive. I was stunned. Clara, how'd you do that? I couldn't help but ask. She straightened my collar, as if brushing off a piece of dust. They infringed on my rights. No one is allowed to slander my property. My property. I touched my nose. Okay, I could get used to that title. Just as the rumor storm subsided, another problem arose. My mom suddenly called me, her voice filled with an unprecedented worry and caution. Caleb, have you gotten on someone's bad side recently? My heart sank. Mom, what's wrong? Oh, it's nothing major. My mom tried to sound casual. It's just that lately, people have been coming to the diner to cause trouble. Complaining about sanitation, fire hazards. The health and fire departments have been here a few times. They never find anything serious, but they just keep coming back, and it's bad for business. And the other day, a few shady-looking guys were hanging around outside. It was pretty scary. Listening to her on the phone, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Tristan, you son of a bitch. You can mess with me, but you don't touch my mom. A violent rage shot through me, so intense my eyes turned red. In that moment, all reason fled. All I wanted to do was find Tristan and smash his punchable face in. Caleb, are you okay? My mom asked worriedly. I forced down the churning anger, took a deep breath, and tried to keep my voice steady. I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry. I'll handle things with the diner. You stay safe, and call me immediately if anything happens. After hanging up, my chest heaved. I paced my dorm room like a caged animal, radiating a do-not-approach aura. My roommate saw that something was wrong and didn't dare to speak. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Who is it? I yelled, irritated. The door opened gently. Clara stood there. She seemed to have just come from outside, a delicate paper bag in her hand. She saw my state, froze for a moment, then quickly walked in, ignoring my roommate's surprised looks, and came straight to me. What's wrong? She asked, looking up at me, her brow furrowed. She reached out to touch my face. I slapped her hand away, my voice hoarse with rage. It's your brother's doing. He sent people to harass my mom. Clara's hand froze in midair. Her face turned deathly pale. She looked at the undisguised anger and pain in my eyes. Her lips moved, as if she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. She lowered her head, her long eyelashes hiding the emotion in her eyes. After a few seconds, she looked up again, her gaze back to its usual calm, but beneath that calm, a chilling dark current swirled, something I had never seen before. Understand, was all she said. Her voice was soft, but it carried a decisive weight. She said nothing more, turned, and left, leaving the delicate paper bag on a nearby table. I watched her leave, my mind a tangled mess. I knew it wasn't her fault, that it was wrong to take my anger out on her, but I just couldn't control it. That night, Claire didn't contact me. I lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I was worried about my mom, and I regretted how I had treated Clara. Late into the night, my phone screen suddenly lit up. It was a message from Clara. Just one line. It's handled. No one will bother your mother again. I shot up in bed, my heart pounding. Handled? How was it handled? I immediately called her. It rang for a long time before she answered. Hello. Her voice was tinged with a weary rasp. The background was quiet. Clara, how did you handle it? You didn't do anything stupid, did you? I asked urgently. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then her soft voice came through, carrying an almost cruel innocence. I just told him that if he ever dared to touch you or anyone around you again, I would expose everything. His embezzlement of company project funds, the model he's keeping on the side, and the limited edition watch he secretly sold from Dad's collection. I was speechless. I held the phone, unable to speak for a long time. The amount of information was overwhelming. He believed you. I asked dryly. He didn't dare not to. Clara's tone was flat, as if she were talking about the most ordinary thing. I have evidence. Holy crap. My girlfriend was a hidden wolf in sheep's clothing. When did you collect all this? I couldn't help but ask. A long time ago, she paused, her voice dropping, laced with a subtle vulnerability. After I decided you were mine, I have to protect you. I can't let anyone hurt you, including my own family. My heart felt like it had been hit by something hard. It was a mix of sourness, shock, and indescribable warmth that spread through my entire body. So, behind her obsessive possessiveness was this deep, resolute desire to protect. Caleb, her voice was tentative, probing. Are you still angry? No, I replied, my voice hoarse, my heart melting. Clara, thank you. I heard her let out a soft sigh of relief. Then, she said in a small voice, then will you still have breakfast with me tomorrow? Yes, of course, I said without hesitation. For the rest of our lives. After hanging up, I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, unable to calm down for a long time. All the threats, in this moment, had been forcefully suppressed by Clara's stunning move. Tristan would definitely not dare to act rashly anytime soon. The crisis seemed to be averted, but I knew this was more like the forced calm before a storm. Clara Sterling, how many more sides of you are there that I don't know? And for us, in this seemingly reverse situation, the road ahead seemed to have become even more complex and unpredictable. Clara's mutually assured destruction threat worked like a charm. That grandson of a bitch Tristan finally backed off. All the nasty rumors about me vanished overnight, as if they'd never existed. My mom called too, sounding much more relaxed, saying no one was harassing her at the diner anymore. Even the previously difficult inspectors had become as friendly as new people. The world, it seemed, had quieted down overnight. But I knew that beneath this quiet, Clara had lit a fuse that pointed directly at her own brother. It left a bad taste in my mouth, not because her methods were ruthless, but because she had to stand against her own family for my sake. I held her close, nuzzling the top of her head, which smelled faintly of her clean shampoo. Clara, I said in a low voice, don't do things like this for me anymore. She looked up from my embrace, her eyes clear and a little confused. Why? They were bullying you. I know, but I searched for the right words. I don't want you to ruin your relationship with your family because of me. They're your family, after all. She was silent for a few seconds, then buried her face in my chest again, her voice muffled. They're not important. After a pause, she added, with an almost delusional certainty, you are? Well, so much for that. In her value system, the name Caleb Hayes was engraved at the very top of the pyramid. Everything else could be sacrificed, even crushed for it. Fine. I sighed, holding her tighter. If I couldn't persuade her, then I would just have to protect her even more carefully and try to keep her from getting involved in this crap again. Life seemed to return to its previous clingy state, only more so. Perhaps because we had faced an external enemy together, the invisible bond between us had deepened. The look in her eyes now held not just possessiveness, but also a complete, unconditional trust and reliance. And I had completely gotten used to having this little shadow that I couldn't shake, and I was happy with it. Time flew by, and soon it was finals week. The air was thick with anxiety and caffeine. Even a top student like Clara was visibly busy, often found in the library or study hall, frowning over thick, foreign language textbooks and notes. As for a slacker like me, I was cramming so hard, I felt like I was gnawing on the feet of the Buddha I was praying to. To make matters worse, some of my professors were as cryptic as sphinxes when it came to highlighting key topics, their study guides covering more ground than the Pacific Ocean. That night, I was in my dorm, tearing my hair out over my macroeconomics textbook. I recognized every word, but together they were gibberish. My roommates were in similar states of despair, their groans filling the room. It's over, it's over. Old Man Lou's key topics is just the damn table of contents. Does anyone have last year's exam? Save me. Caleb, isn't your girl a genius? Ask her for her notes, for the key topics. I was about to snap back at them when my phone lit up. It was a message from Clara. Where are you? Dorm. About to be murdered by economics. I replied, full of grief and indignation. Come downstairs. I paused, then ran to the balcony and looked down. Under a streetlight near the dorm building, Clara was standing there in a cream-colored puffer jacket. She was holding a thick folder, and her breath formed a small cloud in the dim yellow light, softening the lines of her profile. I threw on a jacket and bolted downstairs. What are you doing here? It's freezing, I said, running up to her and taking her hand. It was ice cold. She pushed the thick folder into my hands, her tone calm. For you. I opened it, and my eyes nearly popped out of my head. Inside were neatly organized notes for all my classes, key topic summaries, her handwritten problem-solving steps, and what looked like a highly accurate prediction of exam questions she had somehow extracted from my professors. The handwriting was neat, the organization clear. It was a slacker's holy grail. Holy, I was too shocked to speak. When did you put this together? Recently, she said nonchalantly, as if it were nothing. To study this. You'll have no problem passing. Passing? With this, I felt like I could aim for a scholarship. Clara, you're my savior. I love you so much. I was so excited, I pulled her into a hug and planted a hard kiss on her cold cheek. She was taken aback by my sudden burst of enthusiasm. Her ears turned red, and she gently pushed me away. Don't be silly. It's cold out. Go on up and study. No way. This is a huge favor. A kiss on the cheek isn't enough, I said, holding her tight. I leaned in close to her ear, my voice low and mischievous. How about you don't go back to your dorm tonight? We could go to that little hotel next to campus. Get a room. You could tutor me personally. I was just being a smartass, teasing her, testing the waters. We had done a lot of kissing and hugging, but we had never crossed that final line. On one hand, despite her possessiveness, she was actually quite passive when it came to physical intimacy. On the other hand, I was a bit of a coward. I was afraid of pushing her too fast or triggering some strange switch. Sure enough, the moment the words left my mouth, I felt her body tense up in my arms. Clara looked up at me, her eyes flickering in the dim streetlight. Her face was expressionless, but her gaze was incredibly complex. There was shock, a subtle hint of panic, and a deep, unreadable dark current. She just looked at me, silent, for a full 10 seconds. She stared so long my own skin began to crawl, and I started to think I had taken the joke too far. Just as I was about to laugh it off and take it back, she suddenly spoke. Her voice was very soft, but it was like a small stone dropped into the lake of my heart. "Caleb, do you want me?" I froze. That direct question, combined with her cool, almost ascetic face, had the impact of a nuclear bomb. My throat went dry, my heart hammered against my ribs, and blood rushed to a certain part of my body. I opened my mouth, feeling like my throat was on fire. Of course but, okay, she cut off my stammering. Her eyes became unervingly determined, filled with a desperate, all-or-nothing resolve. "I'm yours." With that, she took my hand and turned, walking toward the off-campus street. Her palm was no longer cold. It was scorching hot, her grip so tight I couldn't break free. I was stunned, stumbling along behind her, my mind a complete mess. Wait, isn't this moving a little too fast? I was just teasing her. How did we end up heading for the finish line? This wasn't like her at all. Shouldn't she have shot me a cold glare, or blushed and called me a pervert? Clara, wait. I dug my heels in, pulling her to a stop. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. Are you serious? I didn't mean it like that. I was just kidding. She looked up at me. Under the dim streetlight, her eyes were shockingly bright. There was no lust in them, only an almost reckless sincerity. "I'm serious," she said, enunciating every word. Her voice had a barely perceptible tremor, but her tone was firm. "Caleb, I'm giving myself to you. That way, you'll be mine forever. You'll never be able to run away." My heart sank. So that was it. She wasn't aroused, wasn't lustful. She was insecure. She was using this extreme method to solidify what she believed was the strongest bond between us. She was afraid I would leave because of external pressure, because of her family's opposition, so she wanted to use her body to tie me down for good. The realization was like a bucket of cold water, instantly extinguishing the desire that had just been kindled, leaving only a deep, aching pity. This idiot. I looked at her pale face, her forced composure, the fear hidden deep in her eyes. My heart ached for her. I sighed and pulled her into a tight embrace, as if trying to merge her into my very bones. "You fool," I whispered in her ear, my voice hoarse but crystal clear. "I don't want it like this." Her body stiffened. She looked up at me sharply, her eyes filled with disbelief and the pain of rejection. "Why? You don't want me?" "You don't. I'm going crazy wanting you," I admitted honestly, gently stroking her cheek, wiping away the moisture that had gathered there from the cold or something else. "But not like this. Not out of fear. Not as a way to tie someone down." I looked into her eyes, my expression utterly serious. "Clara, I want you because I love you. Because it's the natural next step. Because I want to share the most intimate, beautiful thing in the world with you. Not as a bargaining chip. Not as a shackle. You don't need to prove anything this way. You don't need it to hold on to me." I held her face in my hands, our foreheads touching, our breaths mingling. I was never going to run away. Not since you looked at me with those pathetic, pleading eyes when you were sick. Not since you held my hands so tightly at the game store. Not since you stood up to your family for me. I was already caught in your net, with no chance of escape. "So, don't be scared," I said, gently kissing the tip of her cold nose. "Let's take it slow, okay? When you're really ready. When we both know it's just because of love, with no other strings attached." Clara stared at me, the insecurity and desperation in her eyes slowly melting away like ice, replaced by a more overwhelming emotion. Water gathered in her eyes, and then, without warning, large tears began to roll down her cheeks. She didn't make a sound, just cried silently, clutching the front of my shirt, her face buried in my chest, her shoulders trembling slightly. I held her, letting her tears soak my shirt, my heart melting. Damn it. I hadn't found a girlfriend. I had adopted an incredibly insecure, stubborn, precious treasure. After what felt like a long time, her crying finally subsided. She looked up from my embrace, her eyes and nose red, like a sad little bunny, a world away from the usual Ice Queen. "Caleb," she said, her voice thick and nasal, "I'm cold." I couldn't help but smile. I wiped the tears from her face, then pushed the thick binder of life-saving notes back in her hands and crouched down. "Get on. I'll carry you back." She hesitated for a moment, looking at my back, then obediently climbed on. I easily lifted her, her arms wrapped naturally around my neck, her cheek resting against the side of my neck, her warm breath ghosting over my skin. I carried her, walking slowly back toward her dorm. The campus was quiet in the winter night. The only sounds are footsteps and our breaths. "Caleb," she suddenly whispered in my ear. I won't run," she said, her voice very soft, but it carried the weight of a solemn promise. "You're not allowed to run either." I smiled, hoisting her up a little higher. "Yeah, pinky swear. Childish. So what? You have to stay with me." Okay. The night was gentle, the stars dim, but the weight on my back and the breath in my ear made me feel like I had the brightest warmth in the world. We had touched the softest, most vulnerable parts of each other's hearts, and we had found a more stable foundation for our relationship. Not possession, not control, but understanding and cherish. The road ahead was still long, and there would surely be more trouble. But I knew that as long as I had this person on my back, I had infinite courage. And she, it seemed, finally believed that she didn't need shackles to keep me. I was already hers. That night, when I carried her back to her dorm, felt like a turning point. Before, my relationship with Clara was a web she had woven with obsession, trapping me, and I was half resigned, half indulgent. After that night, every thread of that web seemed to fuse with my very bones. It was no longer a passive acceptance, but an active embrace of a warm nest. I knew I was completely done for, and I had completely accepted it. For the rest of my life, it was her. No escape. Clara seemed to sense this subtle shift in me, from resignation to willingness. The sharp, on-edge aura she had, as if constantly ready for betrayal, softened considerably. She was still clingy, still monitored every aspect of my life, but her gaze now held a confident calm, like someone who had finally confirmed that their prize was secure. We officially started our business venture. To call it business was a stretch. It was more like two college students playing house. My so-called business plan was as naive as a grade school essay in front of the professional consultant Clara hired. But Clara didn't care. She only looked at me. Whatever I said, she nodded, her beautiful eyes saying, "My boyfriend is a genius," with a blindness that made me feel both guilty and secretly pleased. In the end, we settled on a direction, a platform for curating and promoting local, personalized artisanal products. The model wasn't new, but I thought it had potential, and most importantly, the startup costs were relatively manageable. Clara moved with astonishing speed. My business plan was only on its third draft when she had already handled the company registration, leased office space, and even made initial contact with the first batch of suppliers. The office was in a creative park near the university. It wasn't large, but it had great lighting. The interior design was her choice, clean and bright, with a cool, techie feel in the details, much like her. I looked at the keys and key cards she handed me, feeling like I was in a dream. "It's done." "Yes," she nodded, pulling me by the hand into the empty office. "From now on, this is ours." Sunlight streamed through the large floor-to-ceiling windows, casting bright patches of light on the floor. She stood in the light, looked back at me, her eyes sparkling with the excitement and anticipation of creating our own little world. "Caleb," she said, pointing to the empty space, her tone carrying a naive ruthlessness and absolute possession. "Everything here, including you, is mine." I smiled and walked over, wrapping my arms around her from behind, my chin resting on her shoulder, inhaling the clean scent of her hair. Yes, it's all yours. Even the dust in the air belongs to you, Miss Sterling." She leaned back into my embrace, satisfied, and began to point out different areas. "Your desk will go here. The biggest one. That will be the conference room, so I can monitor you to see if you're having secret meetings with female employees. That's the break area. You have to take a nap on time. I'll check the security cameras." Listening to her detailed plans, my heart melted. This wasn't planning an office. This was building a larger, more elaborate cage for her prized possession, and I was the treasured canary inside. Fine, a canary it is. To have such a beautiful, wealthy, and devoted keeper. How many people would kill for this? Choosing a name for the company became a problem. I came up with countless names that sounded impressive or interesting, but Clara shot them all down. Not unique enough. Doesn't reflect your belonging. Too common. Finally, she took out her phone, opened an app one had never seen before, and showed me a single name on the screen. Clara Caleb. "We'll use this," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. I looked at the two names, nestled together. My heart skipped a beat. This name was a bit too on the nose, wasn't it? As if we were afraid people wouldn't know who the boss and his boss lady were. "Clara, isn't this a bit too much?" I tried to gently suggest that it was a bit lovey-dovey. "Is it bad?" She looked up at me, her eyes clear and a little confused. "My Clara, you're Caleb. Our company." Looking at her completely matter-of-fact expression, all my arguments died in my throat. "Fine, lovey-dovey it is. It's not like this company was expected to make a fortune anyway. It was mainly a legitimate way for her to keep me." "Okay, your call." "Clara Caleb it is." I nodded. She immediately smiled, a smile like melting snow and blooming spring flowers. She leaned in and gave me a rewarding kiss on the lips. "Good boy." And so, Clara Caleb Creative Inc. was born, both unceremoniously and grandly. The logo was designed by someone Clara found. The main image was two abstract, intertwined letters, C and C. The color scheme was her choice, a cool silver gray that she liked, and an orange red that I had once casually mentioned I thought was vibrant. I looked at the logo, a fusion of our two identities, and sighed. The romance of Yandra was both cringy and heartwarming. The company was just starting, and there were a million things to do. Hiring, product design, platform development, marketing. I was so busy I wished I could split myself into 8 people. The stress of an internship was nothing compared to working for yourself. It was truly burning the candle at both ends. Clara wasn't idle either. Although she didn't understand the specific business operations, she had her own management style. She created a highly detailed Caleb Hayes daily work and life management regulations for me. It covered everything from having to drink a glass of warm water she prepared the moment I arrived at the office, to having to take a 30-minute nap during lunch break, to having to leave work with her every evening. The rules were meticulous to a terrifying degree. My phone was installed with a higher-level monitoring software by her. It could not only track my location and battery life, but also display in real time which apps I opened and for how long. If I didn't reply to her messages for more than half an hour, or open an app she deemed irrelevant, her call would immediately follow, her voice as cold as ice. "Caleb, what are you doing?" At first, I tried to resist, but it only resulted in even more intense care. She simply added her own desk to my office under the guise of co-working to improve efficiency, but in reality, it was 24/7 seamless monitoring. So, my daily work routine became this. I would be at my computer, racking my brains over code, or in a meeting with employees, while she, dressed in an expensive designer dress, sat across from me, quietly reading her financial reports or foreign language novels. Occasionally, she would look up, her gaze sweeping over me like a precision radar, confirming that everything was in order. The employees went from initial shock and gossip to numb acceptance, and even learned to read the boss's wife's mood. "Boss, about this proposal." An employee, Leo, would come over with a file. Before I could even speak, Clara, without even looking up, would say in her cool voice, "The data source on page 3 is questionable. Re-verify it." Leo would freeze, then immediately bow. "Yes, ma'am." I was speechless. I was just a figurehead. Although I was monitored so tightly, I had to admit that Clara's presence was, in a way, a powerful support system. She used her connections and resources to solve many problems I couldn't. For example, a difficult supplier became incredibly cooperative after a single phone call from her. When the platform first launched and lacked traffic, she somehow secured a sizable investment and several major promotional channels. She was like a silent but deadly supercomputer, clearing the path for me whenever I encountered an obstacle, then retreating into the shadows, quietly reading her book as if nothing had happened. Only late at night, when we were cuddling in bed in our apartment, would she wrap her arms around my neck and whisper in my ear, "See, Caleb, you can't do it without me." Her tone would be a little smug, with a hint of an underlying need for reassurance. At those times, I would always hold her tighter, kiss her forehead, and say seriously, "Yeah, I can't do anything without you. So, you have to watch over me, manage me for the rest of our lives. You can't let go." She would purr like a stroked cat, snuggling deeper into my embrace, and then fall asleep peacefully. Starting a business was hard. There were endless trivial matters and immense pressure. But every day when I opened my eyes and saw this girl beside me, who treated me as her entire world, who loved me in her own clumsy and forceful way, I felt that all these difficulties were nothing. New troubles? As the company slowly got on its feet, they would surely come. But I knew that as long as I had this person in my arms, I had infinite courage and strength. After all, I had been Clara Caleb. I had to live up to the name, right? Our little startup, Clara Caleb, with me as the amateur captain and Clara as the golden-keyed, radar-equipped first mate, had somehow managed to leave the harbor and was now splashing around in the vast ocean of the market. 3 months after launch, our user base was growing slowly but steadily. While we were a million miles from success, at least we hadn't sunk. We were catching a few small fish, just enough to stay afloat. For a rookie like me, that was a miracle. Clara remained my most capable assistant and supervisor. She presided over the office, not concerned with profits and losses like other bosses' wives, but only with me. Did I eat on time? Was I slacking off? Did some clueless employee look at me for too long? The company hired a new intern, Zoe Simmons, a marketing major. She was bright, pretty, and a hard worker, and she was a great help to me. Once, to meet a deadline for a promotional campaign, she and I worked late for a few days, our discussions getting quite intense. Just that normal work interaction somehow triggered Clara's sensitive nerves. That evening, after Zoe and I finalized the campaign details and I saw her out, I returned to the office to find Clara sitting in my chair, holding my phone, her face as cold as a Siberian winter. My heart dropped. This was bad. Clara? What's wrong? I went over, trying to put my arm around her. She dodged me, holding my phone. The screen showed my WhatsApp chat with Zoe. We had added each other for convenience, and the chat was all work, as clean as distilled water. Who is she? Clara's voice was flat, but her eyes were as sharp as knives. Why is she messaging you so much every day? Why were you still in contact at 10 o'clock last night? Why did she look at you funny today? I was speechless. My dear lady, we were discussing the campaign. Look at me funny? She was exhausted from pulling an all-nighter. She's the new intern, Zoe Simmons. We were discussing the promotional campaign. It's all work, I tried to explain, my temples throbbing. Does work require contact at 10 p.m.? She clearly didn't believe me, her fingers scrolling through the screen as if searching for evidence. I think this part can be optimized further, boss. I've rechecked the data. Sounds pretty chummy, doesn't it? I almost choked. That wasn't chummy. That was basic professional communication. Clara, can you be reasonable? I was getting exasperated. She was just reporting her work. We have no communication outside of work. I don't like her, Clara said, putting down the phone and looking up at me, her gaze obsessive. Let her go tomorrow. I frowned. Zoe was a capable and hard-working intern. To fire her over some baseless suspicion? That was completely unreasonable. Clara, we can't do that. My tone became more serious. She hasn't done anything wrong, and she's a very diligent worker. We can't fire an employee without cause. I don't need a reason. She stood up, advancing on me, her eyes filled with the cold fury of someone whose authority had been challenged. I said, I don't like her. Let her go. Seeing her so obstinate, acting entirely on her whims, the part of me that valued normal management and respect for others finally surfaced. A company, no matter how small, couldn't be run like this. No, I refused flatly. This is not up for discussion. Zoe has done nothing wrong. She's not getting fired. Clara froze, as if she hadn't expected me to refuse so forcefully. She stared at me, her eyes widening, first in disbelief, then quickly gathering a storm, her eyes turning red. Caleb, she raised her voice, her tone sharp and accusatory. You're arguing with me over an outsider? This isn't arguing. This is being reasonable. I was getting angry too. The company has rules and regulations. You can't just fire someone because you don't like them. That's a basic. I don't want to hear about reason. She cut me off, her emotions running high, her chest heaving. All I know is that the way she looks at you makes me uncomfortable. She's taking up too much of your time and attention. You are mine. All of your time and attention should be mine. As she spoke, tears started to fall, not the pitiful, sad tears from before, but tears of anger and loss of control. You've changed, Caleb. You never used to be like this with me. Do you think that just because the company is doing a little better, you don't need me anymore? That I'm in your way? Seeing her spiral into that insecure panic and paranoia, my anger deflated like a popped balloon, leaving only a deep sense of helplessness and heartache. There was no reasoning with her. Her logic was a closed loop, with only one core principle. Caleb is hers. I sighed, stepped forward, and, ignoring her struggles, pulled her into my arms. Don't be ridiculous, I said, holding her tight, my voice softening. When have I ever thought you were in the way? Without you, this company would have failed 1,000 times over. She struggled in my arms, her fists beating against my back, crying, Then why don't you listen to me? Why are you protecting her? I'm not protecting her, I explained patiently, as if soothing a frightened cat. I'm upholding a basic sense of fairness. Clara, you can't hurt an innocent person just because you're uncomfortable. That's not right. I don't care about right or wrong. I only care about you, she shouted stubbornly, her tears soaking my shirt. I knew that arguing further would only make her more agitated. I fell silent, just holding her tightly, letting her vent, gently patting her back. After a while, her crying subsided into soft sobs, her body no longer so stiff. Clara, I lowered my head, whispering in her ear, look at me. She refused to look up. I cupped her face, forcing her to look at me. Her eyes were red and swollen like peaches, her face tear-streaked, looking pitiful and disheveled. Listen to me, I said, looking in her eyes, my voice crystal clear. I, Caleb Hayes from head to toe, inside and out, belong to you, Clara Sterling, and you alone. This life, the next life, and the life after that. Always. No one can change that. Her eyelashes trembled. She looked into my eyes, as if trying to discern the truth in my words. Zoe is just an employee. To me, she's no different from a desk or a chair in the office. I continued, my tone serious. My eyes, my heart, can only see you. Only you can affect my emotions. Only you can make me willingly be managed, be monitored. I reached out and wiped the tears from her face. So, don't get so upset over someone who doesn't matter, okay? Trust me. Clara stared at me, tears still silently streaming down her face, but the madness and anger in her eyes gradually gave way to a look of hurt and fear. She sniffled and asked in a small voice, Really? As real as it gets, I said, leaning down to kiss her tear-dampened eyes. I promise, from now on, I'll try my best not to discuss work with female employees outside of work hours. If it's an emergency, I'll report to you in advance. But firing her, we really can't do that. She leaned against me, silent for a long time, so long I thought she was still stuck in her own world. Finally, she gave a barely perceptible, a reluctant acceptance of my promise and explanation. But then she immediately looked up, her gaze regaining its familiar, unwavering possessiveness, and added, You have to move her to another team. She can't report directly to you. I paused. Fine. That was the biggest concession I was going to get from her. And she took out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. I'm installing monitoring software on her computer and phone. I need to know what she's doing at all times, whether she's bad-mouthing you behind your back or secretly thinking about you. My eye twitched, but looking at the girl in my arms who had just calmed down and was now waiting expectantly for my approval, I could only nod. Install it. Damn, I had no dignity as a boss. But seeing the look of relief on her face at my compromise, and her even leaning in to give me a salty, tear-stained kiss, I felt that this sacrifice was worth it. This incident was resolved with my unilateral compromise and her reluctant acceptance. The price was an unfortunate intern who was now under 24/7 surveillance, and my authority as the boss taking another hit. But seeing Clara clinging to me again, like a cat whose fur had been smoothed, and even showing a hint of guilt and a desire to please for having wronged me, I felt that life wasn't so bad after all. I just didn't know what trivial little thing would set off this possession bomb next. Whatever. I'll just enjoy the moment for now. I held the person in my arms tighter, feeling her steady breathing and her dependent nuzzles. I'll just deal with whatever comes my way. I have all the patience in the world to deal with her. The incident with Zoe was like a localized thunderstorm. It came on strong and passed quickly. After the storm, the air in the office seemed fresher. If you ignored the fact that Zoe's computer now had monitoring software that would occasionally light up on its own, and the increasingly cautious way she looked at me, as if I were some kind of flammable, explosive material. Clara was clearly very pleased with my compromise, even a little smug. It was as if this incident had reaffirmed her unshakable ownership of me and my fundamental nature of occasionally stubborn but ultimately obedient. This realization put her in a great mood, and even her supervision of me had a triumphant air. For example, she was no longer content with remotely controlling my every move through monitoring software and cameras. She started to engage in more down-to-earth displays of sovereignty. When I was discussing technical issues with a few male employees, and my voice got a little loud or my expression a little animated, she would gracefully walk over with a platter of washed, cut fruit with toothpicks, ignore the suddenly respectful and gossipy looks from the employees, and directly feed a piece of fruit to my lips, her voice as sweet as honey. Honey, you must be tired after talking for so long. Have some fruit to soothe your throat. I'd be speechless, forced to open my mouth and accept the fruit under the watchful eyes of a group of men who were trying so hard not to laugh their shoulders were shaking. And I'd even have to put on a fawning honey, "You're so thoughtful" smile. If I worked past 9 p.m., she would bring her pillow and blanket to the office, make a bed on the sofa, lie down, and stare at me with her big, clear eyes. "You work. I'll wait for you." How could I possibly work? With a stunning beauty lying there, staring at me with that, "I'm not sleeping until you do" look, what normal man could resist? I could only quickly save my files, shut down my computer, and obediently go home with her. The most extreme thing she did was order a batch of company t-shirts. The front had the intertwined Clara Kellogg logo, and the back had a single, bold line. "Taken. Boss's wife is fiercely protective. Do not disturb." And she made it mandatory for everyone in the company, including the cleaning lady, to wear it during work hours. I looked at myself in the mirror, wearing that silly t-shirt with that cringy slogan on the back, and felt that my professional career had reached an all-time low. The employees, however, took it in stride. A few of the bolder ones even told me in private, "Boss, this shirt is great. It stops the people from our partner companies from trying to poach us." They see the shirt and back right off. I was speechless. I guess it was one way to build corporate culture. Just as I was getting used to this sweet but suffocating life of being kept at the company, an unexpected surprise came, like a stone thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples. One day, Clara and I were leaving work on time for once, planning to try a new private kitchen she had recently discovered. As we reached the ground floor of the office building, we saw a familiar figure waiting there. It was Julian Croft, the childhood friend I had punched at a wedding, who had later tried to get close to Clara. He was leaning against a brand new sports car, wearing a well-tailored suit and holding a large bouquet of vibrant red roses. Seeing us, he immediately stood up straight, a charming smile on his face, and walked over. "Clara, long time no see," he said, completely ignoring me, his eyes fixed on Clara. "I heard you, and, started a company? Right around here? I was just passing by, and thought I'd come see you." He held out the roses. I immediately frowned and instinctively stepped in front of Clara. This asshole was back with his pathetic gestures, and with red roses. Clara's reaction was even faster than mine. She didn't even look at the flowers or at Julian. She simply took my arm, leaned against me, and shot Julian a look of undisguised disgust. "Get lost," she said. One word, sharp and clean, like an icicle. The smile on Julian's face froze, the hand holding the flowers suspended awkwardly in midair. He seemed not to have expected Clara to be so blunt, his face turning various shades of red and white. "Clara, I told you to get lost. Don't you understand?" Clara cut him off, her voice even colder, with a condescending pressure. "And it's Miss Sterling, or Mrs. Hayes. We're not that close. Mrs. Hayes." I internally fist-pumped at the sound of that, my posture straightening. Julian was speechless, glaring at me with venomous eyes, then at Clara, who was completely ignoring him and clinging to me. Finally, he sullenly withdrew the flowers, spat out a resentful "Fine, you win," turned, got in his car, and sped off with a roar of the engine. The company receptionist, who had witnessed the entire exchange, stared with wide eyes. Tomorrow's office gossip was set. I put my arm around Clara's shoulder, looking at her still icy profile. I couldn't help but lean down and kiss her cheek, chuckling. "Mrs. Hayes, you're amazing." The coldness on Clara's face instantly melted. She turned to me, her eyes sparkling with a hint of smugness and the pleasure of being praised, but she just huffed. "My property. Is he worthy of even touching it?" Yes, I'm not worthy. Only you are," I said, playing along, my heart soaring. This little incident put me in a great mood, and even the food at the private kitchen tasted exceptionally good. Clara also seemed to enjoy the feeling of repelling an enemy, and ate more cheerfully than usual, even putting food on my plate a few times. However, I had celebrated too soon. 2 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. The person on the other end claimed to be a senior venture capitalist named Mr. Lee. He said he'd seen our Clara Kellogg project at an industry forum and was very interested in meeting with me. To have an investor actively seek us out in the early stages of a startup was like a pie falling from the sky. I was so excited I almost jumped for joy, but a shred of reason held me back. I reported it to Clara first. After hearing the news, Clara didn't look as happy or supportive as I had expected. Instead, she frowned, her eyes filled with suspicion. "Lee? Which Lee? Give me the phone number." I gave her the number. She took out her own phone and started searching for something, her fingers flying across the screen, her expression growing darker by the second. A few minutes later, she put down her phone and looked at me, her eyes cold. He's an investment manager at Julian Croft's uncle's company. My heart sank. Julian? This was his doing? What does he want? I frowned. What else could he want? Clara sneered. He couldn't get to me directly, so he's trying to get to you. He either wants to control you through investment, or mess with the company, or just find an opportunity to humiliate you and make you give up. Damn it, that son of a bitch was relentless. So, no meeting. I asked, a little deflated. Even knowing it was a trap, the thought of a potential opportunity slipping away was disappointing. We'll meet, Clara said, surprisingly, a sharp glint in her eye. Why not? I like to see what tricks he has up his sleeve. She looked at me, her tone firm and unyielding. I'll go with you. The meeting was set for a private room in a high-end cafe. When Clara and I arrived, Mr. Lee was already there, and next to him sat someone I hadn't expected, Julian Croft. It really was him. Seeing us, especially our tightly clasped hands, Julian's eyes darkened for a moment, but he quickly put on his fake, gentlemanly smile and stood up. Clara, Miss Sterling, Mr. Hayes, you're here. Let me introduce you. This is Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee was a man in his 40s, looking sharp and capable, but with a calculating look in his eyes. He shook our hands warmly, made some small talk, and then got straight to the point, waxing lyrical about how much he believed in our project and the resource support they could provide. I listened patiently, sneering inwardly. It was all a bunch of hot air, just a way to throw money at us, slowly infiltrate, and eventually control or destroy the company. Clara barely spoke, just sat quietly by my side, sipping her coffee, her expression calm, as if watching a play that had nothing to do with her. It wasn't until Mr. Lee said, if our collaboration goes well, we can even introduce Mr. Hayes to some higher-level resources. After all, a man needs to have his own career and circle. That Clara finally put down her coffee cup. She looked up, her gaze like two cold lasers aimed directly at Mr. Lee. Her voice was not loud, but it carried an invisible pressure that instantly cut him off. Mr. Lee, I think you've misunderstood something. Mr. Lee and Julian both froze, looking at her. Clara tilted her head slightly, leaning against me, her arm naturally wrapping around mine, a gesture that was both intimate and possessive. She looked at Mr. Lee, a faint, cold smile on her lips. Caleb's career is Clara Caleb. The future of Clara Caleb will be decided by him and me together. We don't need outsiders to tell us what to do, and we certainly don't need. Her gaze pointedly swept over Julian. Some people with ulterior motives to make so-called introductions. She paused, then enunciated every word clearly. His circle, with me in it, is enough. The room fell silent. Mr. Lee's face turned ugly. He opened his mouth, about to say something, but Clara didn't give him the chance. She stood up, pulling me with her, and looked down at the two of them, her tone returning to its usual cool detachment. It seems there's no need to continue this conversation. Goodbye. And with that, she pulled me away, turning and walking out without a second thought. Julian shot up from his seat, his face livid, as if he wanted to stop us. Clara didn't even look back, just threw a cold parting shot over her shoulder. Julian Croft, put away your pathetic little schemes. If there's a next time, I won't mind letting your uncle's company get a taste of a stock market crash. Julian froze, his face instantly turning pale. I was pulled along by Clara, and it wasn't until we were outside, the cool evening wind on my face, that I realized how fast my heart was beating. Looking at her tense profile and tightly pursed lips, I knew she was truly angry. Not because of Julian's harassment, but because he had tried to pull me into another circle that she couldn't completely control, touching her deepest nerve. I squeezed her hand tightly. The regret I felt for the missed investment opportunity long gone, replaced by a more overwhelming emotion. Clara, I stopped, pulling her into my arms, looking down at her still angry eyes, and said seriously, thank you. Thank you for defending me so unhesitatingly. Thank you for shielding me so firmly under your wing. Thank you for letting me know that in your world, I'm the only center, the only everything. Clara looked at me, the anger in her eyes gradually dissipating, replaced by a deep, almost drowning tenderness and possession. She reached up and touched my face, her fingertips cool. Caleb, she said softly, her voice carrying a strange allure. You have to remember, your world can only have me. I will shield you from the storms outside. You just have to stay by my side obediently. I looked at her, at the complete and clear reflection of me in her eyes, the me that belonged to her. My heart felt like it was soaking in warm honey, melting into a puddle. I lowered my head and kissed her deeply, my actions speaking louder than any words. To hell with business investments. To hell with a wider world. With her, a small space is my entire universe. This was resolved in a near-crushing victory. The cost was that I might have forever lost the chance to enter a higher-level circle. But the reward was the tighter embrace and unconditional protection of the person in my arms. By any measure, I had come out ahead. The night was gentle. I held Clara, and we walked toward our little nest named Clara Caleb. The future might hold more challenges, more forces trying to pull us apart. But so what? I knew that as long as I looked back, she would always be there in her own obsessive, determined way, holding up the sky for me. And I was more than happy with that. The drama stirred up by Julian Croft and his venture capitalist uncle was like a fly buzzing by the wayside. After Clara swatted it away, the world was quiet again. Our little startup, Clara Caleb, even seemed to gain a bit of a do-not-approach aura in the local circles, thanks to the boss's wife's fierce reputation, which ironically saved us a lot of unnecessary hassle. I was happy for the peace and quiet, immersing myself in code and product optimization every day. Occasionally, I would look up and see Clara's quiet profile at the desk across from me, reading a book. Sunlight would filter through the blinds, casting dappled light on her, as beautiful as a painting. If you ignore the occasional X-ray-like scrutiny she would cast my way, and the health tracker on my wrist that monitored my heart rate, blood pressure, and sleep quality, with the data synced to her phone in real time, life was practically perfect. Habit is a terrifying thing. I could now, without batting an eye, eat the fruit she peeled and cut for me under her loving gaze, and when she shot me a questioning look because my heart rate had slightly accelerated, I could calmly explain, "It's nothing, just thought of an optimization plan." Got a little excited. She would nod, satisfied, and go back to her book. This peaceful routine continued until one Friday afternoon. The company had landed a small but significant project, providing online promotion and ticketing support for a local arts and crafts market. To get everything done before the market opened on the weekend, my tech team and I were working around the clock. As the deadline approached, a key server configuration issue arose, causing the ticketing page to lag frequently. I rolled up my sleeves and dived in, squatting in a corner of the server room, wrestling with a tangle of wires and servers. After working for a long time, drenched in sweat, I was just about to pinpoint the problem when, in my haste, I wasn't careful and scraped my hand on a sharp, unpolished metal edge of the server rack. Hiss! I sucked in a sharp breath. A stinging pain shot through the back of my hand. A not-so-deep but long gash was now visible, and beads of blood immediately welled up. "Boss, are you okay?" Leo, my colleague, exclaimed. I'm fine, it's just a small cut." I wave him off, grabbing a tissue from a nearby table and pressing it against the wound. "Quick, I found the problem. It's this network card interface. It's a little loose. Try replugging it." Before I could finish, I felt an icy cold pressure descend upon the server room. I looked up, and my heart nearly stopped. Clara was standing at the doorway, her face terrifyingly pale. Her usually calm and placid eyes were now fixed on my hand pressing the wound, and they were swirling with a near-violent terror and fury I had never seen before. "I'm so screwed." Those were the only two words in my mind. "Clara," I had just started to speak. She had already rushed over like a gust of wind, shoving aside a bewildered Leo who was still trying to figure out what was happening, and grabbed my injured hand. Her grip was so tight my bones ached. She stared at the gash, which was still bleeding, her breathing ragged, her chest heaving, and her eyes turning red at a visible rate. She looked up at me, her voice trembling as she tried to suppress something. "Who did this?" I was speechless. "Huh? Who did this?" "I asked you who did this." Her voice suddenly shot up, sharp and hysterical, her gaze like poison daggers as she swept it across the other tech guys in the room. "Who hurt you? Speak." Leo and the others, terrified by her sudden murderous aura, collectively took a step back, their faces pale, frantically waving their hands. "Ma'am, it wasn't us. The boss scraped it himself by accident." "I did it myself by accident," I quickly explained, trying to pull my hand back. The server rack edge was a bit sharp. I wasn't paying attention. "By accident." Clara snapped her head back to me, her eyes locked on mine, tears suddenly streaming down her face, yet her voice was chillingly cold. "Caleb, how many times have I told you? To be careful, to protect yourself. Your body is mine. Every inch of skin, every drop of blood. It's all mine. How dare you? How dare you let it get hurt?" It was as if a switch had been flipped. She completely lost control, shouting at me, tears streaming down her face, her extreme possessiveness mixed with a raw fury that made her look both fragile and terrifying. The air in the server room froze. The other tech guys didn't dare to breathe, wishing they could shrink into the server racks. I looked at this girl, who was on the verge of a breakdown over a small cut on my hand, and my heart clenched with a mix of sorrow and pain. I knew she wasn't being unreasonable. She was genuinely scared. Scared of me getting even the slightest injury. Scared of her property being flawed. "I'm sorry, Clara. It's my fault." I softened my voice, trying to wipe away her tears with my uninjured hand. "Don't cry. It's just a small cut. It'll be fine in a bit." But she slapped my hand away as if I were something dirty, her eyes filled with hurt and a sense of betrayal. "You don't cherish it. You don't cherish the most important thing to me. Caleb, you're an asshole." She screamed at me through her tears, then turned and ran out of the server room. I stood there, stunned, still holding the blood-stained tissue, watching her resolute back disappear through the doorway, my mind a tangled mess. "Boss, this," Leo began hesitantly. "It's fine. You guys carry on. Do what I said. The problem should be solved," I said, running a frustrated hand through my hair. I didn't care about the cut on my hand anymore. I just ran after her. I found her in the break room downstairs. She was sitting on a sofa by the window, her back to me, her shoulders trembling slightly, still crying silently. The afternoon sun shone on her, but it couldn't dispel the thick cloud of sadness and anger around her. I walked over and sat down beside her, sighing softly. "Clara," I said, tentatively reaching out to touch her shoulder. "Don't be angry, okay? I promise. I'll be extra careful from now on. I won't let a single hair fall out of place." "Okay." She didn't answer, even shifting away to avoid my touch. Looks like she was really mad this time. I knew that just coaxing her wouldn't work. I had to use something stronger. I was silent for a while, looking at the traffic outside the window. Then I spoke in a low voice, my tone a mix of self-deprecation and sincerity. "Clara, you know what? I actually kind of like seeing you like this." Her shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "I like seeing you get so nervous over a small cut on me. I like seeing you treat me like a fragile piece of glass, protecting me so carefully." I continued, my voice very soft. "Because it makes me feel that I am deeply, madly loved by you. There's no one else in the world who would care about me like you do." I turned to look at her profile, at her trembling eyelashes. "I know I can be careless sometimes, and I make you angry, I make you worry. But please believe me, I care more than anyone, including myself, about this heart, this body that you have entrusted to me. Because it's not just mine, it's yours. I promise you, from this day forward, I will cherish myself as much as you cherish me." After I spoke, I waited quietly. The break room was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. After a long time, just when I thought she was going to ignore me, she moved ever so slightly. She slowly turned her head. Her eyes and nose were red from crying, like a sad little bunny. The anger in her eyes had faded, replaced by a deep sense of hurt and fear. "Really?" she asked, her voice thick and nasal. "Really?" I nodded solemnly, holding up 3 fingers. "I swear." She looked at me for a long time, then suddenly threw herself into my arms, her hands wrapped tightly around my neck, her face buried in my collarbone, her voice muffled and choked with tears. "Don't let there be a next time. Or else I'll lock you up. I'll keep you at home. You won't be allowed to go anywhere." I held her, feeling the warmth and slight trembling of her body, my heart melting with a mix of pity and amusement. "Okay, whatever you say," I soothed her, patting her back. "If there's a next time, you don't have to lock me up. I'll tie myself up and deliver myself to you, for you to do with as you please. How about that?" She let out a small humph against my chest, a reluctant acceptance of this unequal treaty. A small storm, caused by me, had once again ended with my complete surrender and her tearful offensive. The cost was a cut on the back of my hand that needed a bandage, and a future of having to be even more careful, treating myself like a national treasure. But the reward was the stabilized heartbeat of the girl in my arms, and the slight smile that played on her lips after my confession. I looked at the setting sun outside the window and held her tighter. This sweet, heavy burden. It was truly something I was happy to bear. The small cut on the back of my hand, under Clara's meticulous care, which rivaled that of a national laboratory, with dressing changes 3 times a day personally administered by her, finally healed without so much as a red mark. This put Clara in a great mood. She even, for the first time ever, approved my request to independently attend a weekend basketball game organized by some old college friends, all of whom were supposedly male. I was so flattered I almost thought she'd been replaced by an imposter. It wasn't until I was about to leave and she was straightening my collar that she reminded me in that cool, yet subtly menacing tone no intense physical contact. Don't take your shirt off. Don't drink water from anyone else. Come home immediately after the game. No post-game gatherings of any kind. Right? Still the same old Clara. I grabbed my basketball and bolted for the court like a bird freed from its cage, the very air tasting of freedom. Sweating it out on the court with old friends, joking around, it was like being back in those carefree, pre-Clara college days. Of course, I didn't get carried away. I avoided contact whenever possible. My sweat-soaked t-shirt stayed glued to my body, and I politely declined all offers of water, saying I brought my own electrolyte drink that she prepared. After the game, I ignored my friends' calls to go for a few drinks, and, clutching my sneakers, I ran off faster than a rabbit. When I got back to our apartment, Clara was on the sofa, reading. She heard the door, looked up, and her gaze, like a precision scanner, swept over me from head to toe. Confirming that I was in one piece, not a hair out of place, she gave a barely perceptible nod, a sign of her approval. I've drawn you a bath, she said, closing her book. Her tone was flat, but her eyes held a look of satisfaction. I trotted over, hoping for a rewarding kiss, but she stopped me with a finger to my forehead. You're all sweaty. Gross, she said, wrinkling her nose in disgust, though a hint of a smile played in her eyes. I grinned, knowing she wasn't really mad, and went to take my shower, content. This feeling of being both disdained and indulged by her was damn addictive. The peaceful days flowed by like a stream, until a huge rock was thrown into the water, creating a massive splash. The invitation to Tristan Sterling's engagement party arrived, addressed to Clara. The gold-embossed invitation was dazzlingly extravagant. The venue was a private island in the Maldives, the date set for next month. Clara looked at the invitation, her expression unchanging, and casually tossed it into the trash can as if it were something dirty. We're not going, she said succinctly. I fully supported this decision, but wanted to go to such a fake, ostentatious event, filled with hidden daggers. Not me, and not Clara. However, the world doesn't always bend to our will. A few days later, an unknown number called my phone. I thought it was a sales call and answered it casually, only to hear a slightly old but powerful and authoritative voice on the other end. Is this Caleb Hayes? My heart tightened. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Yes, this is he. Who's calling? This is Marcus Sterling. Marcus Sterling? Clara's grandfather? The legendary tycoon who had long since retired, but whose influence was still immense? The true pillar of the Sterling family. My hand holding the phone instantly broke out in a sweat. This old man was on a whole other level than Chairman Sterling. Why was he calling me personally? Mr. Sterling. Hello, I try to keep my voice steady. Tristan is getting engaged next month. You and Clara will be there, Marcus Sterling said, getting straight to the point. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. His tone was flat, but it carried the weight of someone long accustomed to power, making it impossible to refuse. My scalp tingled. I braced myself and explained. Mr. Sterling, about that. Clara and I have been very busy with the company recently. We might not be able to make it. Busy? Marcus Sterling chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth that sent a chill down my spine. No matter how busy you are, you don't miss a family member's engagement party. Or is it that in your eyes, the Sterling family and this old grandfather no longer matter? That was a heavy accusation. The cold sweat was now trickling down my back. Mr. Sterling, you misunderstand. That's not what we mean at all. Good. Marcus Sterling cut me off. The flights and accommodations will be arranged for you. I expect to see you both there. And with that, he hung up, leaving no room for argument. I listened to the dial tone, stunned. What the hell was that? I told Clara what had happened. Her face instantly darkened, her eyes turning to ice. We're not going, she said, her tone even more resolute than before, tinged with a hint of fury. Did he threaten you? Not exactly a threat. I scratched my head. Just a lot of pressure. Clara stared at me for a few seconds, then grabbed her phone, about to call her grandfather. From the look on her face, she was ready for a direct confrontation. I quickly stopped her. Whoa, Clara, calm down. A head-on clash with her grandfather. I couldn't even imagine the consequences. One word from him, and our little company could be shut down tomorrow. Why should he force you? Clara looked at me, her eyes red, not from sadness, but from anger. Since when do they get to decide what I do? Seeing her so fiercely protective of me, I was touched and helpless. I knew she was upset about the pressure on me, but in this situation, we didn't seem to have a choice. Clara, I said, taking her hand and sighing, your grandfather himself has spoken. If we refuse to go, there will probably be more trouble later. How about? I looked at her defiant eyes and said tentatively, We just make an appearance? Show up, then leave? Besides, the Maldives is beautiful. We can treat it as a company-paid vacation, just the two of us. Clara pursed her lips, silent, the coldness and resistance in her eyes still strong. I knew she was weighing her options. She wasn't afraid of the Sterling family, but she was afraid they would target me. After a long stalemate, she finally gave a reluctant, almost imperceptible nod, her voice muffled. Just an appearance. You're not to say a word more than necessary to them, and you're not to leave my sight. Mission accepted, I immediately declared, relieved. Getting her to compromise this much was a victory. And so, our trip to the Maldives was set. Clara had agreed, but she was clearly not happy about it. She glowered at the crumpled invitation, which she had retrieved from the trash. For days, her bad mood palpable. Even the employees at our company were treading on eggshells, afraid of setting off the boss's wife. I knew she was bottling up her anger, and I felt for her, but there was nothing I could do but try to coax her out of it. I took her to new dessert shop after work. We watched silly comedies at night, and when she stared at me, I would lean in and kiss her, a clumsy way of telling her, I'm okay, don't worry. Every time I kissed her, she would initially resist for a moment, then soften, returning my kiss, her hand on my neck tightening, as if to confirm my presence. The night before we left for the Maldives, I was in the living room, packing. Clara came out of the shower, wearing a silk nightgown, her hair damp and cascading over her shoulders. She sat down next to me and watched me quietly. Caleb, she suddenly said my name. I looked up. She looked at me, her eyes in the lamplight like water-soaked obsidian, clear and deep, with a strange seriousness and stubbornness. Remember, she said, her voice soft, but her words were like a brand on my heart. No matter what happens, no matter what they say or do, you are not to let go of my hand. She reached out, her cool fingers touching my cheek, her gaze so focused it was almost obsessive. You are mine, forever. No one can take you away from me, unless I'm dead. My heart lurched, as if it had been hit by something hard. Looking at the mix of love and insane possessiveness in her eyes, I dropped what I was doing and pulled her into a tight embrace. You fool, I whispered in her ear, my voice hoarse but firm. Don't talk nonsense. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying by your side. This life, the next life, I'm stuck with you. The Sterling family, God himself, no one is taking me away from you. She trembled slightly in my arms, then hugged me back with all her might, burying her face in my chest and letting out a muffled hum. In that moment, I knew that what was coming was not just an engagement party, but a silent war between her and the entire Sterling family, a war over me. And I was her most steadfast, her only ally. The path ahead was unknown, a storm was brewing. But holding this girl's hand, feeling her unconditional reliance and possession, I suddenly felt that there was nothing to be afraid of. At worst, we would just deal with whatever came our way. After all, I was tied to her for life. Anyone who wanted to tear us apart would have to get through her first. The seaplane, like a giant silver dragonfly, landed with a roar on the sapphire-clear water, finally docking at the private island leased by the Sterling family. The sun was scorching, and the sea breeze was hot and humid. The white sand was as fine as flour, the coconut trees swayed, and the turquoise sea and blue sky were as beautiful as a vibrant oil painting. However, for Clara and me, stepping into this luxurious paradise, our mood was completely at odds with the beautiful scenery. Clara wore a chic, white linen suit, a wide-brimmed straw hat obscuring most of her face, revealing only her tightly pursed, pale lips and a tense jawline. She held my arm tightly the entire time, her nails almost digging into my skin, like a warrior stepping into a dragon's den, wary of everything around her. The butler who greeted us was polite, but the scrutiny and distance in his eyes were clear. He led us through a lush tropical garden to the main villa in the center of the island, which was designed like a modern palace. Along the way, we could already see many guests. The men were impeccably dressed, chatting and laughing. The women were adorned with jewels, their laughter like tinkling bells. When they saw us, especially Clara, their gazes shifted, filled with undisguised curiosity, scrutiny, and even a hint of schadenfreude. Apparently, the news of the Sterling family's eldest daughter attending her brother's engagement party with her unpresentable boyfriend was no secret. I could feel Clara's grip on my arm tighten, the cold aura radiating from her almost lowering the surrounding temperature. TSK, it actually came, an unwelcome voice sounded. I didn't need to look to know it was Tristan. He had his arm around his exquisitely made-up fiancée, a wine glass in his hand, a fake smile on his face, and his eyes filled with a malice that was almost palpable. Sis, Caleb, Bulkuma. What do you think? Not a bad place, huh? A little more spacious than your little startup, wouldn't you say? Clara didn't even bother to look at him, treating him like thin air. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It's all right. The sand is nice and fine. Tristan was choked by my lukewarm response. His face darkened. He was about to say something else, but his fiancée gently pulled on his arm, and he let out a cold snort and walked away. The engagement dinner was held by the infinity pool overlooking the ocean. The long tables were covered with white tablecloths, and the silverware gleamed coldly in the candlelight. The guests mingled, a swirl of perfumes and expensive fabrics, the air thick with luxury, hypocrisy, and undercurrents of tension. Clara and I were seated at a table next to the main table, not in the center, but conspicuous enough. Chairman Sterling and his wife sat at the head of the main table, with Tristan and his fiancée beside them. And at the very head sat a white-haired, solemn-faced, imposing old man, Marcus Sterling, Claire's grandfather. He would occasionally look up, his gaze as deep as an ancient well, sweeping over the crowd, his eyes lingering on Clara and me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Clara was expressionless throughout the dinner, only occasionally putting a piece of food on my plate, whispering in a voice only I could hear, "Don't eat the shrimp, it's cold, bad for your stomach, or have some soup, it's warm." She was like a dutiful zookeeper, meticulously feeding her charge even in the lion's den. I, on the other hand, was like a carefully protected porcelain doll, mechanically eating under her guidance, the food tasteless. Halfway through the dinner, the MC began to liven things up, and the guests started toasting the soon-to-be wed couple. Tristan, with his arm around his fiancée, stood by the pool, holding a microphone, confidently giving a speech filled with cliches about thanking his parents, the guests, and how lucky he was to have found true love. At the height of his speech, he pulled his fiancée into a passionate French kiss, to the cheers and applause of the crowd. Just as the atmosphere reached its peak, and everyone's attention was on the kissing couple, I suddenly felt Clara move beside me. She put down her chopsticks, picked up her napkin, and slowly wiped her lips. Then, in full view of everyone, she suddenly turned to me, cupped my face in her hands, and, with Tristan and his fiancée as a backdrop, she kissed me deeply, without a word of warning. It wasn't a peck, not a fleeting touch. It was a kiss that was a declaration of sovereignty, lingering, and dominant. Her tongue forcefully parted my lips, with an undeniable possessiveness, stealing my breath, tasting me. Time seemed to stand still. The cheers and applause from the crowd were silenced, as if someone had hit a mute button. All eyes, which had been on the couple by the pool, turned in stunned unison to our table. I could feel countless gazes on us like spotlights, filled with shock, contempt, amusement, and disbelief. But I was beyond caring. My world consisted only of her cool, commanding scent in my mouth and her cool fingers cupping my face. This kiss was a proclamation to the entire Sterling family, to everyone present. Look closely. This is my man, Mine. When the kiss ended, Clara pulled back slightly, her breathing a little ragged, her cheeks flushed an unnatural red, but her eyes were shockingly bright, burning with an almost defiant, all-or-nothing light. She looked toward the main table, at the livid faces of Chairman Sterling and his wife, at Tristan's venomous glare, and finally, her gaze settled on the impassive face of Marcus Sterling. She didn't say a word, but the meaning in her eyes was unmistakable. The entire venue was silent. You could hear a pin drop. The atmosphere was so awkward it felt like it had frozen over. I looked at her lips, which were even redder and more inviting after the kiss, at the reckless determination in her eyes. My heart felt like it had been hit by something hard, a mix of sorrow, shock, and an indescribable warmth that spread through my entire body. This fool, she had used this most direct, most shocking method on the Sterling family's home turf, to back me up, to legitimize me. I reached out under the table and squeezed her trembling hand. Just then, at the main table, Marcus Sterling, who had been silent all this time, let out a soft chuckle. The sound was quiet, but in the silent banquet hall, it was exceptionally clear. He picked up his teacup, took a sip, and his gaze once again fell on Clara and me, his expression still unreadable. He just said faintly, "Young people," quite a temper, and with that, he looked away, as if the shocking scene had never happened. But that one light sentence was like a pardon, breaking the frozen atmosphere. The guests seemed to come back to their senses, and the whispers started up again, though their gazes still darted in our direction. Clara's tense body relaxed almost imperceptibly after her grandfather's words. She turned to me, the madness and defiance in her eyes fading, replaced by a hint of guilt for her rashness and a touch of smugness, as if to say, "See how amazing I am?" I looked at her and couldn't help but lean down and plant a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Yeah," I said in a low voice, smiling. "My Clara is the most amazing." This ambush of a dinner party was completely derailed by Clara's sudden, shocking kiss. We didn't participate in any of the subsequent festivities. Under the countless complex gazes, we left early and returned to the separate overwater villa assigned to us. Closing the door, we shut out the world. Clara seemed to have exhausted all her energy, leaning against the door, breathing heavily. I walked over and pulled her into my arms, feeling her still rapid heartbeat. "Were you scared?" I asked softly. She shook her head against my chest, then looked up at me, her eyes sparkling. "Were you? Scared of what?" I smiled, leaning down to kiss the tip of her nose. "With you here, I'm not scared of anything." She leaned back into my embrace contentedly, her arms wrapped around my waist, and whispered, "I just wanted them all to know that you are mine. No one is allowed to have any ideas about you, and no one is allowed to look down on you." I looked out at the deep night sky of the Indian Ocean and the countless stars, the girl who had just raised hell for me in my arms. I felt a strange sense of peace and fulfillment. To hell with high society rules. To hell with public opinion. With her, even hell is paradise. Although I didn't know what the Sterling family's reaction would be, at least for now, we had won this round. And we had won it beautifully. I held her tighter, thinking that this trip to the Maldives was well worth it. The overwater villa's balcony faced the endless Indian Ocean. The night breeze, carrying the salty scent of the sea, blew away the last of the stifling atmosphere from the party. The stars were like scattered diamonds on the velvet night sky, and the distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks was the only soundtrack to the quiet night. Clara was nestled in my arms, curled up on the soft lounge chair on the balcony. Neither of us spoke. The sharp, defiant aura she had at the party had subsided. She was now like a cat with its claws retracted, quietly leaning against me, her fingers tracing idle circles on my chest. That shocking kiss was like a bomb dropped into the deep waters of the Sterling family. The aftershocks had not yet settled, but in our little corner, there was a strange, eye of the storm calm. Still angry, I lower my head, my chin brushing against the top of her head, and asked softly. She shook her head against my chest, her voice muffled. "Not worth it." Getting angry over people who didn't approve of us was indeed not worth it. I held her tighter, but she suddenly looked up, her eyes shockingly bright in the moonlight, with a hint of smugness and lingering stubbornness. "I'm happy." "Happy about what?" "Happy that everyone saw." She reached out, her fingertips gently touching my lips, where the heat of her kiss seemed to linger. "That you are mine. Stamped and certified. No denying it." I caught her mischievous hand and brought it to my lips for a kiss, smiling. There was no denying it long ago. From the moment you cornered me by the science building and asked if I'd been watching you for a long time, I knew I was done for. Remembering her cool, obsessive demeanor when we first met, I couldn't help but smile. Fate was a strange thing. A slip of the thumb on a like button had truly led to a lifetime of entanglement. Clara also seemed to recall that time, a small smile playing on her lips, but her eyes held a more complex emotion. She leaned back into my embrace, and, after a moment of silence, she said softly, "Caleb, actually, I used to be very scared." "Scared of what?" I was surprised. It was hard to imagine the word scared coming from her. Scared that you wouldn't want me clinging to you, that you would find me terrifying, that one day you would get tired of it and leave. Her voice was very soft, like a feather brushing against my heart. "So I could only hold on to you tighter, monitor your every move, eliminate all possible threats. I thought that way. You would never leave." This was the first time I had heard her so openly dissect her inner insecurities. The seemingly strong, controlling her, had such fears hidden deep inside. My heart melted, and I tightened my arms, pulling her deeper into my embrace. "You fool," I whispered, kissing her hair. "Are you still scared now?" She shook her head gently against my chest, her voice choked with a sense of relief. "Not anymore. I know you won't leave." That kiss wasn't just a declaration to the Sterling family. It was a final confirmation for herself. A confirmation that this property of hers belonged to her willingly. "Yeah, I'm not leaving," I said, cupping her face and looking into her eyes in the starlight. "Clara Sterling, listen to me. Caleb Hayes, am not being held captive by you. I willingly walked into your world and have no intention of leaving. Your obsession, your possessiveness, everything about you, good and bad, I accept it all. So, don't be insecure anymore." Her Her eyes turned red again, but she didn't cry this time. She just nodded forcefully, then leaned in and kissed me. This kiss was no longer defiant or declarative, but filled with trust, dependence, and a love so thick it was almost tangible. Under the Indian Ocean stars, we exchanged a silent, eternal vow. The next day, as planned, we skipped the rest of the engagement festivities and left the luxurious but suffocating island by seaplane. Returning to our own little world named Clara Caleb, everything seemed to be back to normal. Except that the way the company employees looked at their boss's wife now held not just the usual awe, but also a hint of indescribable admiration. The news of her heroic deeds in the Maldives had probably spread through some channel. Clara's mood was noticeably better. Even her supervision of me had a lazy, satisfied air. She was no longer as tense as before. Occasionally, if I was busy with work and forgot to reply to her message for more than half an hour, she wouldn't immediately call in a panic. Instead, she would send a sad-looking sticker with a message. "Honey, you've been out of contact for 31 minutes and 17 seconds. Followed by, "Sad Kitty. JPG. It made my heart flutter, and I would immediately drop everything to call her back, listening to her say things like "I miss you" in her cool voice, which probably lowered my work efficiency quite a bit. But this sweet burden was one I was happy to bear. The peaceful days didn't last long. One weekend, as Clara and I were enjoying a rare lazy morning in the apartment, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Caleb." My mom's voice sounded a little hesitant. Are you and Clara doing okay?" "Yeah, we're great," I said, a bit confused. "What's up, Mom?" "Oh, it's nothing." My mom paused. "It's just, Clara came to see me a few days ago, and she brought some kind of partnership agreement." "Partnership agreement?" I froze, looking at Clara, who had woken up and was watching me with her clear, bright eyes. She just blinked at me, a picture of innocence. "What partnership agreement?" I pressed. "Well, she wants to make our little diner and a few of our neighbors' shops into some kind of offline experience center for your Clara Caleb platform. She said it would help drive traffic to each other's businesses and help us with online promotion." My mom's voice was uncertain. The contract looked pretty complicated, but Clara said it would be good for your company and for the businesses on our street. So I signed it. I was speechless. My God, my Yander girlfriend was now expanding her business to my mom's street. What was this? A hostile takeover from a source. Not even my hometown was safe. I hung up the phone and looked at Clara, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "When did you go and sign a contract with my mom? Why didn't you tell me?" Clara sat up, the silk nightgown slipping off her shoulder, revealing her delicate collarbone. She looked at me, completely unapologetic. "It's a surprise, and it's good for the company's development, and it helps your mom and the neighbors. It's a win-win." She leaned in, wrapped her arms around my neck, and pecked me on the lips, her eyes sparkling. "Now, your old street is mine too. Are you happy?" Looking at her, so proud of herself and a little smug, I couldn't stay mad. I just pulled her into my arms and kissed her hard. "I'm happy," I said, my forehead against hers, smiling. "My Clara is the best. Not only do you have me completely under your thumb, you've even taken over my old neighborhood." She smiled, satisfied, like a cat that had successfully stolen a treat, and snuggled deeper into my embrace. The day spun on, a steady, busy rotation managed by my Yandera boss lady and our little startup, Clara Caleb. The platform's user count hit a small milestone. While it was still a long way from success, it was enough to keep me, the self-taught CEO, buzzing with excitement for days. Of course, this was under Clara's strict, must get 7 hours of sleep per night rule, which meant a lot of just lying there with my eyes closed. Clara seemed very pleased with my state of being moderately successful in business, but still firmly in her grasp. She no longer meddled in the day-to-day operations, instead focusing her management energy on cultivating me to be more refined and exclusive. For example, she somehow obtained a diet plan from a royal nutritionist and began to strictly regulate my 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. Even the temperature and frequency of my water intake were clearly defined. My desk was now permanently adorned with her custom-made smart thermos that displayed real-time temperature and volume, as well as timely, exquisitely plated snacks that looked like they came from a Michelin-starred restaurant. The company employees had gone from initial shock to numb acceptance, and now even actively reminded me, "Boss, it's 10 o'clock. Time for your nuts from the boss's wife." "Boss, your thermos shows the water temperature is 118 degrees, the optimal drinking temperature. Please rehydrate in a timely manner." I felt like I wasn't working at a company, but receiving 24/7 premium care at a high-end wellness retreat. Clara's explanation was, "Your health is the company's most valuable asset and requires scientific management." I didn't buy it for a second. She clearly just enjoyed the feeling of having every aspect of me under her control. However, seeing the look of satisfaction in her eyes, like a gardener admiring a well-tended flower, whenever I finished her prepared meals on time, my feeble protests would just die on my lips. Fine, an asset it is. To be treasured like this is a kind of happiness, too. One evening, we were both off work for once, curled up on the apartment sofa, watching a mindless variety show. Clara was like a lazy cat in my arms, her head resting on my lap, her fingers idly playing with the buttons of my pajamas. The show happened to feature a couple feeding each other. I looked down at the person in my arms. The warm yellow light traced the soft lines of her profile. Her long lashes were lowered, her nose small and delicate, her lips a natural rosy color. She looked so quiet and beautiful. An idea, a mischievous impulse, popped into my head. I picked up a strawberry from the fruit bowl, brought it to her lips, and, mimicking her usual tone, said softly, "Clara, open up." She froze, looking up at me in surprise. It was usually her feeding me. This was a first. A hint of shyness flickered in her eyes, but she obediently opened her mouth and took a small bite of the strawberry from my hand. A little juice stained her lips red, making my heart skip a beat. "Is it sweet?" I asked with a smile, my thumb instinctively brushing her lip to wipe away the stain. Her cheeks flushed, and her gaze darted away. She gave a soft and buried her face in my chest, only her red-tipped ears visible. I looked at her rare, shy demeanor, and my heart felt like it had been tickled by a feather, a soft, warm feeling spreading through me. So, even someone as strong as her could be shy about such a small thing. This discovery was like opening a new world. I began to try, in small ways, to take care of her in return. When she was engrossed in a book, I would place a cup of warm osmanthus tea, her favorite, by her hand. In the morning, I would beat her to it and hand her the toothbrush with toothpaste already on it. When we crossed the street, instead of letting her cling to me, I would take the initiative to hold her and shield her from traffic. Each time, she would show the same reaction. First surprise, then a flicker of joy in her eyes, followed by a forced composure. But her ears would betray her with a telltale blush. This reaction was more moving to me than any direct words of love. I knew she was slowly getting used to and enjoying this feeling of being carefully held in my hands. Her hard shell was being gently pried open by me, revealing the soft interior. However, a yander's nature is deeply ingrained. My reverse operations, while pleasing her, also seemed to subtly trigger her possession nerve. She began to assert her ownership in a more advanced way. Before, it was monitoring my whereabouts and social interactions. Now, she began to collect me, not in a creepy way, but with an almost obsessive desire to possess every trace of me. She would secretly keep my old fountain pens, the reason being they have your fingerprints and scent on them. She would take my jackets that I occasionally left at the office back to the apartment and hang them in her closet, next to her designer dresses, and then look at the incongruous yet harmonious scene with satisfaction. She even, after I got a haircut once, carefully collected a small lock of my hair, put it in a delicate velvet pouch, and kept it under her pillow. When I accidentally discovered the pouch one night, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and was also a little creeped out. "Clara," I said, holding the pouch and looking at her, "isn't this a bit much?" She looked at me, her eyes clear and a little defiant. "What's wrong? They're your things. Can't I keep them?" "You can, but—" I try to find the right words. "This hair isn't a little weird." "What's weird about it?" She came over, took the pouch, and held it preciously in her hand, looking at me with an obsessive gaze. "It's a part of your body. I want to have it. Can't I?" Looking at her, you dare say no expression, all my arguments died in my throat. "Fine, whatever you want, as long as you're happy." I sighed and pulled her, along with the little pouch of my own hair, into my arms. "Fine, keep whatever you want. But—" I paused, looking down at her, half joking, half serious. "Next time you want something, just ask me. I'll cut it for you. Don't be so sneaky. It's creepy." She blinked in my arms, then a small, triumphant smile played on her lips, and she nodded. Okay. This was resolved with my compromise and her satisfaction. The cost was that I had to be more vigilant about my personal belongings, lest I wake up one day to find a part of me missing. But seeing her childish, pure smile of joy at possessing a part of me, I felt that this sacrifice was not so bad. After all, my entire being was already hers. What a few strands of hair, a few old clothes? However, I had a faint feeling that her desire for complete possession was still escalating. I didn't know what new tricks she would come up with next. But whatever it was, I think I was ready, after all, to be loved so perversely and deeply by her, What else could I do but surrender? The first ray of morning sun, like a golden veil, slipped through a gap in the apartment curtains and gently fell on my face. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was Clara's peaceful sleeping face. She was turned towards me, one hand still clutching the fabric of my pajama shirt, as if to confirm my presence even in her dreams. Her long eyelashes cast faint shadows beneath her eyes, her breathing was even, and her lips were curved in a slight, unprecedentedly relaxed smile. The girl who had broken down in tears over a vow just last night now seemed like a small boat that had finally found a safe harbor, resting quietly beside me. I didn't move, afraid to disturb the tranquility. I just watched her, feeling my heart fill with a warm, swelling emotion. Today was our wedding day. There was none of the nervous excitement I had imagined, only a sense of inevitability, a deep, calm anticipation. Perhaps my gaze was too intense because her thick lashes fluttered and she slowly opened her eyes. Her just-woken eyes were a little hazy, like water-soaked obsidian, clear to the bottom. She blinked, and upon seeing me, her gaze instantly cleared, and then, as if stars had been lit within them, they shone with a stunning light, filled with pure joy and a hint of relief. "Morning," she said, her voice soft and husky from sleep. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes." I leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. Hearing the new title, a faint blush crept up her cheeks, and her eyes curved into beautiful crescents. She leaned in and returned a kiss on my lips, tasting of fresh morning breath. "Sealed and confirmed," she whispered a little smugly. "Effective today." We smiled at each other, the air thick with silent sweetness. The rest of the morning moved with a precise, almost fast-forwarded pace, yet everything was perfectly orchestrated under Clara's absolute control. Makeup artists, hairstylists, dressers. The top-tier team she had hired arrived on time, surrounding us. I was sat in a chair, a puppet at their mercy, listening to the sounds of brushes and hairdryers working on me. Occasionally, through the mirror, I could see Clara in the next room, undergoing her own meticulous carving. She sat upright, her eyes closed, allowing the makeup artist to work, her expression calm, almost reverent. When everything was ready, I stood in the living room in my sharp, black tuxedo, feeling like a newly wrapped gift waiting to be opened. And then, I saw her walk out of the room. Time seemed to freeze. She was in her white wedding dress, her veil not yet down. Her makeup was flawless but didn't hide her natural, cool, ethereal beauty, instead enhancing it to a breathtaking degree. Sunlight danced on her, the subtle beading on her dress sparkling, making her seem to glow. She walked towards me, her gown trailing silently behind her. Her eyes were locked on me, filled with nervousness, anticipation, joy, but most of all, a sense of final, unshakable possession. She stopped in front of me, tilted her head up slightly, and reached out to adjust my already perfect tie. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft, but carrying an undeniable force. I took her hand, feeling its cool, yet firm touch. I looked into her eyes and smiled. "Ready when you are, my queen." A beautiful, satisfied smile curved her lips. The drive to the estate was quiet and smooth. Clara and I sat in the back of the limousine, her hand holding mine tightly, our fingers intertwined. The two rings on our ring fingers would occasionally brush against each other with a faint, crisp sound. She didn't speak, just gazed out at the passing scenery, then turned back to me, her eyes intense, as if trying to etch my current image into her soul. I could feel the slight dampness of her palm, not from fear, but from an extreme excitement and anticipation. The car entered the estate, passed through strict security, and finally stopped outside the ceremony site. Through the window, I could see the lakeside, a white floral arch, the guests already seated, chatting quietly. The sun sparkled on the lake like scattered gold. Everything was as beautiful as a painting. A staff member opened the door for us. Clara took a deep breath, squeezed my hand, and looked at me, her eyes shining with a desperate, joyful resolve. "Caleb," she said my name, her voice clear and firm. "Let's go." I squeezed her hand back, nodding firmly. "Let's go." We stepped out of the car together and onto the white carpeted path leading to the floral arch. In that moment, all eyes were on us. There were looks of blessing and relief from my mom and Clara's few close relatives, a complex, unreadable stare from Chairman Sterling, a deep, ancient well-eye gaze from Marcus Sterling, and the genuine smiles of our employees and friends. But I had no time for any of them. My world consisted only of the girl beside me, clinging to me, leaning her entire weight on my arm, and the universe of stars burning in her eyes, a look of absolute love and possession. We walked slowly, steadily, step by step. The white carpet beneath our feet felt like the blessed path to our shared future. We reached the arch and stopped. The officiant began to read the solemn vows. His voice echoed by the quiet lakeside, but to me, it was like a distant background noise. My entire focus was on the girl in front of me, in her white wedding dress, about to become my wife. She looked up at me, her eyes unblinking, my reflection clear and complete within them, undeniable. "Caleb Hayes, do you take Clara Sterling to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" I looked into her eyes without a moment's hesitation and answered clearly, "I do." 3 simple words, yet they carried the weight of 1,000 pounds, resolute and firm. Then it was her turn. "Clara Sterling, do you take Caleb Hayes to be your lawfully wedded husband? To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Clara's breath hitched. She looked at me, her eyes turning red, a shimmer of tears gathering but not falling. Her lips trembled, and then a crystal-clear voice, choked but firm, echoed for everyone to hear, "I do." It wasn't just an answer. It was a proclamation, a brand, an irrevocable vow that bound our lives together. Applause erupted, mixed with the sound of soft sobs. Then came the exchange of rings. I took the man's ring that matched her eternal prisoner ring and carefully, reverently, slipped it onto her ring finger, next to the sapphire ring. She took my ring, her hand trembling ever so slightly, but her movements were firm and precise as she slid the ring onto my finger. The cool metal touched my skin, yet it felt scorching hot, like an eternal brand. "You may now kiss the bride," the officiant announced with a smile. I looked at her, so close to me, at her red-rimmed eyes, at the love and satisfaction overflowing from them, and my heart swelled with an indescribable emotion. I reached out and gently cupped her face, my thumbs stroking her delicate skin. Then I leaned down, and in front of all our guests, I kissed her lips deeply and reverently. This kiss was unlike any other. It held no lust, no dominance, only endless tenderness, cherish, and a promise that was bone deep. I felt her tremble under my lips, felt her arms tighten around my neck, felt her hot tears finally fall, wetting my cheeks. Salty, yet incredibly sweet. The applause swelled like a tide. But we were oblivious. In that long kiss, which felt like it lasted an eternity, we exchanged our breaths, and we exchanged all the time of our lives to come. I knew from this moment on, we were bound by law, by vows, and by our own obsessive, profound love. She was my wife. I was her husband, the eternal prisoner and the willing warden. Our story had turned a new page, one that was destined to be filled with more troubles, yet also with an extraordinary sweetness.